From a blind date came a sister who is a CEO. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 576 Lobbyist. The next morning, Feng Bao called Su Weifeng not long after he arrived at the company. "Brother Su, can you come to the criminal police team?" "What for?" Su Weifeng asked in confusion. "Please help me ask for leave. I haven't been back for a month. The leader wants to punish me, and I can't explain myself." "PFFT, you can't even handle this." Su Weifeng was a little speechless, but he still came to the criminal police team. Feng Bao took Su Weifeng directly to the captain's office. The captain was named Qiao Yushan. He immediately came forward enthusiastically, shook Su Weifeng's hand tightly, and said, "Mr. Su, thank you for training such an excellent criminal policeman for us this time." Su Weifeng turned his head and glanced at Feng Bao, who immediately stuck out a tongue and said, "I was afraid that you wouldn't come, so I lied." Su Weifeng was also a little helpless and said, "Captain Shan, you asked me to come just because of this, right?" Qiao Yushan laughed and said, "Of course not. Come on, sit down, and let's talk slowly." Feng Bao took the initiative to potty for Su Weifeng, and then sat aside. Qiao Yushan said, "Mr. Su, Feng Bao told us about what happened in the past month. I just want to ask, can your training methods be promoted in the police force?" Su Weifeng shook his head and said, "This method is totally unsuitable for police training. I also came from the special forces. Even our special forces fighters cannot be trained in this way. After all, the casualty rate is too high, and the police don't need such training." Qiao Yushan immediately said regretfully, "I also know that this training method is too dangerous, but I feel that there has been no good way to improve the strength of our criminal police, so the casualties caused this year are not small. I'm really worried." Su Weifeng could feel the sadness in Qiao Yushan's heart, and said, "Actually, the method is not difficult. Let Feng Bao beat them in the future and set a direction. For example, whoever can hold on for a certain period of time will be qualified, and then what kind of rewards will be given?" Qiao Yushan's mouth twitched, and he said, I'd better think about it again." Su Weifeng's method is very common in the mercenary group, which is to let the strong motivate the weak. However, the mercenary group is ruled by the leader and is not bound by any laws or systems, and the criminal police team naturally cannot act so recklessly. Qiao Yushan changed the subject and said, "We are not in a hurry about this matter. I have another thing I want to ask Mr. Su." Su Weifeng knew that Qiao Yushan was looking for him for something other than this, so he smiled and said, "Captain Shan, just tell me. It's about the family. This time it will definitely cause a strong shock among the entire family. If it's just a restructuring of assets, we are not worried. I'm just a little worried that the party whose interests are damaged will make some drastic actions, which will cause problems in public security." Su Weifeng said, "On this point, I can only guarantee that I and my friends will not take the initiative to do anything that violates the law, but I cannot guarantee that those people will take such drastic actions." Qiao Yushan said, "I'm naturally clear about this. We are a society ruled by law, and we cannot solve everything privately. So if we really encounter such a problem, I hope Mr. Su can notify us in time, so that we can use legal means to protect everyone's safety." Su Weifeng laughed and said, "As a soldier, I respect the law and discipline very much. Even if someone comes to hurt me, I will first subdue him, and then hand him over to the police for handling. I will not do anything like lynching." Qiao Yushan was relieved and said, "Mr. Su is really conscious. I feel relieved." Su Weifeng said with a smile, "I understand your difficulties. In fact, the military and the police are not separated. They are all serving others." Qiao Yushan stretched out his hand and said seriously, "Mr. Su, just because you said that the military and the police are not separated, I also regard you as a friend." Su Weifeng shook hands with Qiao Yushan again. After finishing the business, Qiao Yushan looked at Feng Bao, then smiled bitterly and said, "Mr. Su, there is another trouble now." "Another trouble?" Su Weifeng was really puzzled this time. "Yes, Feng Bao's parents are mild leaders. You and Feng Bao had a good relationship some time ago, so I thought you were Feng Bao's boyfriend, so I told her parents about it. At this point, Qiao Yushan's face was quite embarrassed. Su Weifeng's face suddenly turned black and he said, "Then what?" Qiao Yushan coughed lightly and said, "Feng Bao asked for leave this month. I know she was training with you, but Bao didn't let me tell my parents, so I said she went out traveling with you. Now, my old leader has to see you, the future son-in-law." Su Weifeng turned to look at Feng Bao, but Feng Bao shrugged and said, "You can't blame me. It was the captain who insisted on talking nonsense to my dad. Now my dad doesn't believe anything I say, and has to let you go." Su Weifeng said speechlessly, "You are really a fool. I'm a married man. How can I go back with you? If your dad finds out, I'm afraid my legs will be broken." Feng Bao nodded in agreement and said, "My dad will, but he can't beat you. It's okay." Qiao Yushan looked at Feng Bao in confusion at this time. Feng Bao's attitude made him quite confused. Could it be that Feng Bao really had some relationship with Su Weifeng? But Su Weifeng's attitude clearly showed that he had no such relationship with Feng Bao. Besides, it was impossible for a man and a woman to go out for a month without anything happening. Even he didn't believe it. Feng Bao said helplessly, "But now even if I say that I will go out with you for training for this month, my dad will also come to see you." Su Weifeng snorted unhappily. If Feng Bao had come to say this herself, he would have directly refused. She would have to solve the misunderstanding on her dad's side herself. But Qiao Yushan took the initiative to be a lobbyist, which meant that Qiao Yushan was also being framed. Feng Bao's own explanation was no longer effective. She could only shake her head helplessly and said, "Okay, then I'll go over and explain it to your dad." Qiao Yushan was immediately relieved and said, "Then I'll trouble Mr. Su." Chapter 577 Lingling Xiaoxun. Qiao Yushan escorted Su Weifeng out of the building, while Feng Bao followed Su Weifeng into the car. Su Weifeng glared at her and said, "You really know how to cause trouble for me." Feng Bao shrank her neck and said, "Master, I have no choice. I will treat you to lunch at noon." "No, I have to go back to the company." "When will you come home with me? Is this weekend okay? I have to tell my parents first, otherwise they will come to kill us." Su Weifeng frowned and said, "Okay, then I will go with you this weekend." "Okay." Feng Bao jumped out of the car happily. Su Weifeng was a little puzzled. What was this girl happy about? He was not his real boyfriend. In the evening, when Su Weifeng and his friends returned home, ZHU Xiaoxun and Xu Lingling arrived immediately. After ZHU Xiaoxun came in, she took the initiative to say to Zhao Xiaoshu and Sun Yumeng, "Two sisters, we would like to have some dinner here tonight. Can you bring us some food?" Sun Yumeng hurriedly said, okay, we'll prepare more." Lin Zhuangxun smiled and said, "You must have something to talk about. I'm not interested in these things. You can go to the study and chat slowly." Su Weifeng took ZHU Xiaoxun and Xu Lingling to the study. ZHU Xiaoxun said first, this time, things went incredibly smoothly. Basically, everyone paid their bets. Su Weifeng was a little surprised and said, "So smooth?" ZHU Xiaoxun smiled and said, "It was a bit troublesome at the beginning. Everyone was looking at others. We directly found a family other than the Liu family and the Jin family, and then we gave them a bet, and the other party paid the bet obediently." Su Weifeng thought for a while, nodded, and said, "Everyone should be able to judge the current situation. Now it is better to lose a small profit, but it can still ease the relationship with you. If you resist at this time, you will be completely hostile to you. Wait until you have completed the integration, and then you can deal with them. After you have recovered, then they will not lose these benefits." ZHU Xiaoxun immediately gave a thumbs up and said, "Brother Su is really as good as a god. His analysis is so correct. If you set up a family yourself, you will definitely be the largest family in the provincial capital, and even compete with those families in the capital." Su Weifeng quickly waved his hands and said, "Let's forget about it. I'm just a bystander. I just said a few words, and guessed it right. Besides, I still want to be free. I can't stand this kind of life, where I have all kinds of constraints in everything I do, and have to consider other relationships." ZHU Xiaoxun and Xu Lingling both giggled. After laughing for a few sentences, Xulingling frowned and said, but the Jin family and the Liu family have not expressed their views yet. Su Weifeng smiled and said, such a big bet, if they want to take it out, they will have to lose half of their assets. How can they bear to take it out? Zhu asked and said, that's the problem. If they don't take it out, then this bet will be like a joke. Although everyone will laugh at their two families for not keeping their promises and temporarily losing their credibility and prestige, it's not just a problem that we haven't gained any benefits, but also makes everyone doubt the ability of our two families. We don't take such a big benefit. Su Weifeng smiled faintly and said, why do others doubt it? It's very simple. They envy that you two families have obtained such a big benefit. Why don't they get this benefit? So as long as you give up a little benefit, you don't actually have to take the initiative to force the Liu family and the Jin family. Other families will pounce on them like wolves and bite them. Xulingling immediately said, but in this way, we have to give up a lot of benefits. Su Weifeng said with a smile, what's the use of it? Benefits are just like the money you earn. What's the use of leaving them there? You have to spend them to have meaning. The same is true for benefits. You have to use these benefits to fight for greater benefits for yourself. Zhu Xiaoxuan said with a smile, then it's not just our losses, but also yours, brother Su. Su Weifeng laughed and said, I made this bet with Jin Yu just to punish him and make the Jin family uncomfortable. I don't care whether I make money or how much I make. In fact, I don't know where to spend so much money now. No matter how much I make, I will just leave it there. It's useless. You can do whatever you want with these benefits. Don't worry that I will disagree. Zhu Xiaoxuan and Xulingling nodded repeatedly and said, brother Su, since you said so, let's do it. Xulingling looked at Su Weifeng with admiration and said, brother Su, the more I get in touch with you, the more I can find your attractiveness. I really love you to death. Zhu Xiaoxuan immediately chuckled and said, that's a confession. Should I make room for you? Before Su Weifeng spoke, Xulingling had already hurriedly grabbed her, shrank her neck, looked at Su Weifeng, and said, don't, I feel guilty when you leave. Zhu Xiaoxuan chuckled and said, Lingling, this is not your character. You used to be fearless, why are you so timid now? Xulingling smiled bitterly and said, yes, in front of others, I'm also fearless, but in front of brother Su, it was better before. I just felt that he was very special. The more I contacted him, the more I felt the gap between brother Su and me was getting bigger and bigger. I can only look up to her. Now I don't even have the courage to confess. Su Weifeng coughed lightly and said, I'm a married man. Xulingling sighed lightly and said, I know, I didn't say I came to destroy you. Sometimes I just deliberately tease Lin Zuangsun and see brother Su by the way, and I'm satisfied with that. Su Weifeng waved his hands quickly and said, Lingling, don't say it so aggrievedly, you make me feel guilty. Xulingling said faintly, I'm sorry, I didn't mean it, I just suddenly felt something. Let's talk about the family affairs this time. At this time, Su Weifeng suddenly read a hint of cunning in Xulingling's eyes. His face suddenly turned black and said, stinky girl, now you start to play tricks on me. Xulingling broke down in a second, giggled, then raised her chin and said, I won't be so self-pitying. You are married, and I didn't come to harass or seduce you, but you can't stop me from liking you. Zhu Xiaoxuan couldn't help but smile, and said, Lingling, you even lied to me, and I was sad with you. Xulingling smiled and hugged Zhu Xiaoxuan's arm, saying, you are sad, because you always suppress your own thoughts in your heart. We cannot fight, but why do we have to hide our thoughts? Zhu Xiaoxuan's face suddenly turned red, and she was so embarrassed that she didn't dare to look at Su Weifeng. Chapter 578 The Aura of the Legal Wife. Next, Zhu Xiaoxuan and Xulingling discussed the details with Su Weifeng. Although Su Weifeng was no longer interested in these things, as an important beneficiary, if he did not express his opinion, Zhu Xiaoxuan and Xulingling would not be so relaxed. He wanted to be a hands-off boss, but he had to raise his watch to express his opinion. There was a knock on the door, and Lin Zuangsun walked in, and said with a smile, have you finished your discussion? Do you mind if I come to listen? Zhu Xiaoxuan and Xulingling immediately agreed, of course. After Lin Zhuangxuan came over, he sat directly next to Su Weifeng and said, "You are here as guests, but I'm not at home. It is really rude." Zhu Zhuangxuan immediately came to his senses and said, "So it's Yushan. If you hadn't told me, I would have thought you were Zhuangxuan." It was only at this time that Su Weifeng realized that this was Qiao Yushan. Qiao Yushan chuckled and said, "Yes, we are too similar, so I have to introduce myself first, so as not to be embarrassed if I recognize the wrong person, right?" Qiao Yushan glanced at Su Weifeng, and her eyes were really meaningful. Zhu Zhuangxuan and Xu Lingling both saw Qiao Yushan's eyes, and they seemed to think of many scenes at once. Su Weifeng was a little embarrassed. Qiao Yushan did this on purpose. He didn't understand what she meant by saying this on purpose. Zhu Zhuangxuan actually had more contact with Qiao Yushan and was more comfortable at this time. He smiled and said, "Sister Yushan, you are also very hardworking, running back and forth between the provincial capital and home." Qiao Yushan spread her hands and said, "There is no way. When I'm at home, someone is annoyed by looking at me. I'd better stay away to avoid that person from looking at me with dislike." Su Weifeng quickly said, "What are you talking about? When have I ever been impatient with you? My wife, I'm never annoyed by looking at you." By the way, he also hugged Qiao Yushan's shoulders. Zhu Zhuangxuan chuckled and said, "Brother Su, you are a little unromantic. Sister Yushan means that you should go to the provincial capital to accompany her more often. Sister Yushan can come back from the provincial capital at night, so why can't you go to the provincial capital on purpose?" Su Weifeng was stunned for a moment and said, "This is really my fault. I will make more time to accompany Yushan in the future. Thank you, Zhuangxuan, for reminding me." Qiao Yushan waved her hand and said, okay, I dare not trouble you, as if I'm forcing you to go." Su Weifeng shook Qiao Yushan quickly and said in a flattering way, "I didn't force you. I overlooked it. I will correct it in the future. Don't be angry, my wife." Qiao Yushan pushed Su Weifeng and said angrily, "Go away. Stop making trouble. You are making a fool of yourself for Zhuangxuan and Lingling." Xu Lingling kept staring at Qiao Yushan. In fact, she had never seen Su Weifeng and Qiao Yushan get along with each other. Normally, Xu Lingling is the daughter of a big family, while Qiao Yushan is just a girl from an ordinary family. Even though she is now a CEO, Xu Lingling has a stronger background and aura. But in front of Qiao Yushan, Xu Lingling actually felt like she couldn't even breathe, as if she was a mistress. In front of someone's wife, she didn't dare to overstep the mark, for fear that the wife would find out. "No, I'm not a mistress, and I didn't do anything with Brother Su. I just like Brother Su." Xu Lingling reminded herself in her heart, but she opened her mouth to talk to Qiao Yushan to boost her morale, but she opened her mouth a few times and couldn't say a word. "Lingling, what's wrong with you? Just say whatever you want to say," Qiao Yushan said to Xu Lingling with a smile. Xu Lingling felt like she was about to cry because of her cowardly look and said, "It's you who are showing off your affection. How can we single dogs feel?" Qiao Yushan blushed immediately and quickly apologized. "Yes, I'm here to listen to the real business. You guys continue." Zhu Zhuangxuan simply recounted the things he had discussed with Su Weifeng from the beginning. Then he asked, "Sister-in-law Yushan, do you have any objections?" Qiao Yushan hurriedly said, "I have no objection. To be honest, this kind of thing has completely exceeded the scope of my cognition. I thought you were talking about the merger of companies, but this is not just a merger of companies. It is much more complicated than this. You guys talk about your things, and I'm just following and learning." Zhu Zhuangxuan also knew that Qiao Yushan had really never been exposed to these things, so he continued to talk about it. This time everyone talked about the same thing, and Lin Zhuangxuan also came up to call them to eat. At the dining table, Su Weifeng looked at the group of beauties around him, and his mind suddenly became a little dazed. Qiao Yushan on the left, Lin Zhuangxuan on the right, and then Zhu Zhuangxuan, Xu Lingling, Zhao Zhaoshu, and Sun Yumeng. 6 beauties sitting there, each with their own characteristics, really pleasing to the eyes. Originally, there should have been a He Xian in this house. but He Xian didn't come back last night, and today He Xian actually called Su Weifeng and said that she was going back to Yulin. She expressed her gratitude to Su Weifeng, but since her illness was cured, she couldn't live in Su Weifeng's house anymore to disturb him. Su Weifeng didn't keep her for long. Although he and He Xian have been together a lot recently, in his eyes, He Xian is indeed just one of his patients. The disease has been cured, and the doctor naturally can't keep the patient at home. Lin Zhuangxuan burst out laughing and said, "Brother-in-law, do you feel like you are intoxicated by wine without being drunk by yourself?" Su Weifeng's eyes suddenly turned to Qiao Yushan, who rolled her eyes at Su Weifeng and said, "Just say what you think. Don't worry, I won't blame you if you say it today." Su Weifeng chuckled and said, "To be honest, this is really pleasing to the eyes. If we make a video and post it, it will definitely make countless men envious." Lin Zhuangxuan chuckled and said, "Why don't we take a video?" Qiao Yushan immediately glared at Lin Zhuangxuan and said, "What are you going to take? Can we just take a video?" Of course, Lin Zhuangxuan was just joking, and the atmosphere instantly became much more relaxed. After opening a bottle of red wine, everyone ate and chatted, and the atmosphere became better and better. Lin Zhuangxuan took a sip of wine and said, "Brother-in-law, Zhuangxuan, Lingling, you all made a lot of money this time. Shouldn't we celebrate it properly?" Su Weifeng smiled and said, "Okay, how do you want to celebrate?" Everyone started to discuss it, but for everyone, it was meaningless to buy anything, and if they went out to eat and drink, they were not very interested either. "How about we go on vacation abroad?" Lin Zhuangxuan's suggestion was instantly recognized by everyone. Chapter 579 Qiao Yushan is moved. On the rooftop terrace of Meng Keking's house, Su Weifeng and Qiao Yushan sat on a double swing chair. Su Weifeng would occasionally push his feet lightly, causing the rocking chair to rock gently. Obviously, Qiao Yushan liked this hanging chair very much. She said with a smile, "Keking's home actually has such a thing. I never thought that she still has a childlike side." Su Weifeng smiled and said, "In other places, she may be subject to too many constraints. Here, she may release the hidden things in herself. To be honest, don't be unhappy. I actually really like the decoration style of Keking's home." Su Weifeng laughed and said, "She said that this house is for us to live in, which is equivalent to giving it to us. If we like it, we can live here." Qiao Yushan stuck out her tongue and said in a rare mischievous tone, "Haha, if mom hears this, she will definitely scold me. I don't like the house that she worked so hard to decorate." Su Weifeng also showed a sly smile and said, "Let's not tell her. Anyway, the house will be left to them in the future." Qiao Yushan suddenly became quiet, her head resting on Su Weifeng's shoulder, her eyes looking at the sky above her head. Su Weifeng was silent for a moment. The longer he spent with Qiao Yushan and the others, the more he seemed to ignore the things in the army. A hero is hard to resist the temptation of beauty. He seemed to have been immersed in this comfortable and happy life. Qiao Yushan suddenly said quietly, "I can see so many stars." Su Weifeng also looked up at the sky and said, "It's just that there are not enough stars." Qiao Yushan said angrily, "It's good to see so many stars here. You really spoil the view." But he immediately changed the subject and said, "But as you said, it's a bit regrettable. If the sky is full of stars, it must look more beautiful." Su Weifeng said, "Didn't we agree to go abroad for a vacation? Let's find a country with good air and environment and experience the natural scenery." Qiao Yushan sighed and said, "This is just a whim of everyone. How many people here can really have time for this vacation?" Su Weifeng said, "If we squeeze in time, there will always be some. It depends on whether we want to. Being busy at work is just an excuse. In this world, no matter who you leave, it will still turn around. We don't need to think so highly of ourselves." Qiao Yushan tilted her head to look at Su Weifeng, kicked her feet, and increased the swing amplitude of the rocking chair, and said, "Do you really want me to go out with you?" "Of course." Su Weifeng answered without hesitation. Qiao Yushan bit her lip and said softly, "Then, I'll take a look when the time comes. I'll try to make time." The chair swayed slightly, and the two of them just stared at the starry sky for several minutes. Qiao Yushan called softly, "Husband." "Yeah." Su Weifeng agreed, and turned to look at Qiao Yushan. Qiao Yushan also looked at her. The husband was called naturally and casually, with a hint of intimacy. Although Su Weifeng only responded, it also showed that he was used to this address, without any strangeness or awkwardness. Qiao Yushan said faintly, "It has been 4 months since you came back, right?" Su Weifeng nodded and said, "Almost 5 months." Qiao Yushan bit her lip and said, "That means you will return to the army in a year and a half." Su Weifeng opened his mouth, wanting to comfort Qiao Yushan, but still told the truth. "That is the latest deadline. If the motherland and the army need me, I may have to go back at any time. You may leave earlier." Qiao Yushan frowned. Su Weifeng nodded and said, "Yes, but it's just a possibility." Su Weifeng felt Qiao Yushan holding his arm and suddenly exerted some force. Qiao Yushan was silent for a while and said, "Many people in the army get married and have children. Can't you do the same?" Su Weifeng sighed and said, "It's possible in other troops, but it's impossible here." "Why?" Qiao Yushan frowned. Su Weifeng hesitated for a moment, and finally said, "Because many of the missions we carry out are extremely special missions. When we go to carry out the mission, we cannot have any burden. If we have too many concerns, then we will be afraid of death when we carry out the mission, which will be very disadvantageous." Qiao Yushan said, "Then you still have parents? Is it difficult for you to sever this kind of family relationship?" Su Weifeng said, "Yes, when we are on a mission, I can't even think about my parents, and I dare not think about my lover. At that time, I was a Cold War machine. If you saw me at that time, you would feel terrible." Qiao Yushan said resentfully, "Then is there no other possibility?" Su Weifeng shook his head lightly and said, "In our Long Zio team, those who are seriously injured and have no combat effectiveness can come back, just like me now, but, except for me this time, our team members will either die in battle or stay in the team intact." Qiao Yushan's face rose. The meaning of Su Weifeng's words couldn't be clearer. Unless he died or was given another important task, he could return to his place. "We are just pretending to be a couple, aren't you? You suddenly acted so sad, and I'm a little uncomfortable with you." Su Weifeng smiled, trying to ease the atmosphere. Qiao Yushan stared at Su Weifeng's eyes, and suddenly hugged his neck, opened her lips slightly, and said domineeringly, "Kiss me." "Ah." Qiao Yushan's request changed too quickly, and Su Weifeng was a little uncomfortable. "I said, kiss me." Qiao Yushan said, and without waiting for Su Weifeng to answer, she took the initiative to kiss him. Under the starry sky, on the terrace, in the hanging chair, Su Weifeng and Qiao Yushan kissed each other. Su Weifeng could feel Qiao Yushan's enthusiasm, and really felt that Qiao Yushan's feeling for him had turned into a kind of love. The true energy in his body was agitated again, and that state appeared again. No. Under normal circumstances, Su Weifeng would immediately immerse himself in that state. But this time, Su Weifeng was really moved by Qiao Yushan. At this moment, if he entered the realm, it would be a blasphemy to Qiao Yushan. He couldn't just care about himself and ignore Qiao Yushan's feelings. So, Su Weifeng forced himself to jump out of that realm. What was the loss of recovery? He just wanted to kiss Qiao Yushan and respond to Qiao Yushan's feelings. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 580 Qiao Yushan's attitude. After a long time, their lips parted. The two looked at each other, but Qiao Yushan's lips slowly pursed up, and the expression on her face became resentful. "What's wrong?" Su Weifeng was a little panicked, hugged Qiao Yushan, and asked anxiously. Qiao Yushan sighed and said, "There is only Zhuangxuan in your heart, not me." "Why do you say that?" Su Weifeng frowned and said, "I admit that I like Zhuangxuan, but I have to admit that my feelings for you are becoming more and more real." Qiao Yushan snorted and said, "You are lying to children. I know your special reaction. You didn't have that reaction just now, which is enough to show that you don't like me." Su Weifeng suddenly smiled. Qiao Yushan glared at him and said, "You scumbag, you don't like me, so isn't this taking advantage of me?" Su Weifeng hugged Qiao Yushan and said, "It's not that I didn't have that kind of reaction, but I completely gave up this time, because I felt that when I was kissing you, I actually did other things, which was too blasphemous to you. I would rather give up this time of recovery." Qiao Yushan stared at Su Weifeng in a daze. Her eyes suddenly red, raised her hand and hit Su Weifeng, and said angrily, "You bastard, there is a chance to recover from the injury. Why do you give up?" Su Weifeng grabbed Qiao Yushan's hand and said, "This kind of injury can't be fully recovered in one go, but it takes a little bit at a time. If I give up this time, it won't have much impact." Qiao Yushan bit her lip and said angrily, "That won't work either. This has to be accumulated slowly, and this kind of situation doesn't happen every day. You really piss me off. You actually wasted a great opportunity like this." Su Weifeng stared into Qiao Yushan's eyes and said softly, "Although we have been together for 3 or 4 months, I used to think that you were just acting because of this fake marriage, but now I know that you have started to take it seriously. This is a day worth remembering, so idiot." Qiao Yushan scolded Su Weifeng, then pushed Su Weifeng away and said, "You think too much. I don't really like you." Ah. Su Weifeng was stunned for a moment, then smiled slightly, blinked his eyes, and said in a teasing tone, "If you say you don't like it, then you don't like it." Qiao Yushan's face turned slightly red. She tapped the ground with her toes, and the hanging chair swayed slightly again, and she said faintly, "I really don't want to think too much. It's just that we haven't seen each other for a month, and I miss you a little." Su Weifeng held Qiao Yushan's hand and said, "I understand. In fact, I also understand. It's too much of a luxury for us to say that we love each other." After that, he couldn't help but sighed and said, "I do think too much. I really can't bear this kind of love." Qiao Yushan looked at Su Weifeng quietly for a few seconds, then burst out laughing. Su Weifeng made Qiao Yushan feel quite uncomfortable. "You." Qiao Yushan chuckled again and said, "You are a strong contradiction now. Your injury needs true love, but you are afraid that true love will hurt both parties. In this matter, tell me, do you have to choose one?" This. Su Weifeng was embarrassed all of a sudden. Qiao Yushan really hit the point of the matter at once. Qiao Yushan said again, "So, you can only choose one now. Either you choose not to recover from your injury, then you really don't hurt anyone, and just stay with Zhuangsun. But, can you not go back to the army?" "I really can't." Su Weifeng could only shake his head to deny it. On this matter, he really didn't hesitate at all. Qiao Yushan sighed again and said, "So you can only accept it. I can only be regarded as a good medicine for your recovery." Su Weifeng looked at Qiao Yushan, and suddenly felt something was wrong. He frowned and suddenly said, "When did you know that my recovery method requires true love?" Qiao Yushan rolled her eyes at Su Weifeng and said, "Why, Zhuangsun can find it, but I can't. Do you think there is something wrong with my IQ? Humph, the little thoughts of you and Zhuangsun. I just don't want to point it out sometimes." Su Weifeng was speechless, and stared at Qiao Yushan in amazement. He felt his face getting hot. "Humph, Zhuangsun, this girl brought 2 little girls here. Do you think I don't know what's going on with you? Aren't they also here to recover your injuries? She is really willing to share you so generously with others." Su Weifeng was even more embarrassed. He and Zhuangsun had been lying to Qiao Yushan, but Qiao Yushan just didn't want to point it out. At this time, he felt like finding a crack in the ground to crawl into. When Qiao Yushan saw Su Weifeng's expression, she couldn't help but burst out laughing again and said, "What's the matter? Are you a little ashamed?" Su Weifeng grinned and said, "Yes, Yushan, I feel like a clown performing in front of you now." Qiao Yushan said with a stern face, "So I tell you, you'd better not lie to me in the future. I will definitely be able to see it." "Yes, yes." Su Weifeng nodded repeatedly, then grinned again and said cautiously, "What do you really think now?" Qiao Yushan met Su Weifeng's gaze. Her expression became serious again, and said, "Since Zhuangsun likes to help you arrange everything like this, let her do it. I don't have so much time. Besides, I'm not as bold as her to help you find a bunch of girls to help you heal your injuries." Su Weifeng coughed lightly and said, "This. I won't do anything stupid. You know that this requires true feelings. I will never pay attention to the kind of person who doesn't make me like him." Qiao Yushan said, yes, you are alone, but you have to give so much true love, so I'd better not stay in this house. I can be in a good mood if I come back 1 or 2 days a week, otherwise I will make you angry to death. Qiao Yushan did not hide her jealousy at this time. Su Weifeng was very moved and hugged her and said, wife, thank you so much. Well, no matter whether it is true or not, I at least have such a status. Isn't it better than others? Qiao Yushan smiled somewhat self-deprecatingly and then said, don't say anything to Zhuangsun. Don't let her know my true thoughts. I still have some face. Su Weifeng chuckled and said, you two are really awkward. You both want me to hide the fact that I know the situation from you. This may be self-deception, but isn't it for you? Humph. Qiao Yushan's little hand pinched Su Weifeng's waist fiercely. Chapter 581 Dress Up Well. This night was actually similar to any other night. Qiao Yushan didn't want to waste her time, so she kept her distance from Su Weifeng. This made Su Weifeng feel that things had changed. In the past, he didn't want to get involved in so many emotional matters, so he always restrained himself and didn't do anything excessive. Now, whether it was to recover from his injuries or because he really liked them, he always wanted to be closer to them, but everyone kept their distance from him, making it extremely difficult for him to take further steps. Lin Zhuangsun was like this, and so was Qiao Yushan. Su Weifeng woke up at around 4 in the morning. Looking at Qiao Yushan sleeping soundly beside him, he really wanted to do something. But he couldn't disappoint Qiao Yushan's expectations of him, so he simply got up on tiptoe and went to the gym downstairs. After exercising for a while, the door opened. Zhao Xiaoshu poked his head in and said with a smile, good morning, brother Su. Su Weifeng smiled slightly and said, good morning to you too. Zhao Xiaoshu walked in, stood beside Su Weifeng, and said, brother Su, you are really hardworking, getting up so early to exercise. Su Weifeng said, while lifting the barbell, you are up too. Girls like you just like to sleep in, and getting up so early is also hard for you. Zhao Xiaoshu said as a matter of course, let's get up and make breakfast. Su Weifeng asked with a smile, do you feel uncomfortable when I ask you to cook every day? Zhao Xiaoshu smiled and said, of course not, my sister Yumeng and I are very happy to see you eating so happily. The two of us don't have any skills. We live and eat for free here. If we don't do some work, we will feel embarrassed. Su Weifeng said with a bit of doting, you and Yumeng are really innocent and cute. Zhao Xiaoshu's eyes lit up at once and said, brother Su, do you think we are cute? Yeah. Su Weifeng put down the barbell, stretched out his hand and gently pinched Zhao Xiaoshu's face, saying, how cute. Zhao Xiaoshu's eyes suddenly became watery, hugged Su Weifeng's arm, rubbed her face against Su Weifeng's palm, and said, I'm so happy. Cough. Maybe Zhao Xiaoshu was too involved, and she didn't hear the footsteps behind her. When she heard this light cough, she turned around. She saw a person standing at the door. She couldn't recognize whether it was Qiao Yushan or Lin Zhuangsun. At this time, she was panicked. If it was Lin Zhuangsun, of course it would be fine, but if it was Qiao Yushan, wouldn't she be miserable? Judging from the clothes, this should be Qiao Yushan, because Qiao Yushan was wearing this set of pajamas last night. Brother-in-law, you got up so early to train. You continue, I'm just here to stroll around. Then after yawning, she turned around and walked out. Sister Zhuangsun. Zhao Xiaoshu hurriedly wanted to chase out, but Su Weifeng grabbed Zhao Xiaoshu at once. Why are you in such a hurry to go out? Su Weifeng asked with a smile. Zhao Xiaoshu said in a panic, I was afraid that Sister Zhuangsun would be angry, so I secretly ran to find you. You really think too much. If she was afraid of this, she wouldn't let you stay here. Stay with me for a while, I have to finish my practice. You are right, it was just an instinctive reaction. Zhao Xiaoshu stuck out his tongue. Su Weifeng chuckled and didn't explain, but he was absolutely sure that it was Qiao Yushan just now. But Qiao Yushan didn't want everyone to know that she didn't care, so she temporarily pretended to be Lin Zhuangsun. Su Weifeng didn't tell Zhao Xiaoshu anything else, and Zhao Xiaoshu naturally wouldn't ask Lin Zhuangsun again, because of this little thing. When the two went downstairs, Qiao Yushan had changed her clothes and sat at the dining table, eating. You are going out early again? Su Weifeng asked. Qiao Yushan took a sip of milk and said with a smile, yes, I came back temporarily. I must go back to the head office this morning. Then he glanced at Zhao Xiaoshu and said, Xiaoshu is also very beautiful today. Zhao Xiaoshu immediately said shyly, sister-in-law, I'm just a little girl, how can I be beautiful? Qiao Yushan chuckled and said, haha, there is no need to be modest. While you are young, you should pay more attention to your dressing. Purity is good, but women should always be more feminine to attract men. Husband, when you are free, take Xiaoshu and Yumeng to buy some cosmetics, clothes and so on. They work so hard in our family. If you don't pay them, why don't you buy them more gifts? Su Weifeng said hurriedly, okay, I'll take them out shopping today. Zhao Xiaoshu said quickly, no, we are both indescribably satisfied now. We have good jobs and such high salaries. Now we live here for free. We don't know how to thank sister-in-law. Qiao Yushan wiped her mouth and said, you are so polite. I feel embarrassed to let you live here. Husband, I'll leave this to you. Zhao Xiaoshu said in panic, thank you, sister-in-law. Qiao Yushan said, the driver is waiting for me, then I'll leave first. Su Weifeng wanted to see Qiao Yushan off, but Qiao Yushan rolled her eyes at Su Weifeng and said, I'm just going to work. You know that we have a good relationship, but those who don't know might think you are afraid that I will be abducted away by someone else. Su Weifeng couldn't help but smile and said, okay, then I don't have to see you off. After Qiao Yushan left, Zhao Xiaoshu said a little nervously, brother Su, sister-in-law, doesn't she hate us, does she? Su Weifeng smiled and said, you think too much. Oh. Zhao Xiaoshu saw that Su Weifeng's expression was normal, so he breathed a sigh of relief, patted his chest, and said, I'm really afraid of my sister-in-law. I'm really afraid that she will see something and then never let us appear in front of you again. Your sister-in-law has already seen it. Su Weifeng muttered in his heart, and then smiled. I'm going to take a shower. Do you want to come with me? Okay. Zhao Xiaoshu blushed, but agreed without thinking. No. Sun Yumeng just came out of the kitchen at this time and hurriedly stopped Zhao Xiaoshu. Zhao Xiaoshu immediately stuck out his tongue and said awkwardly, I just said it casually. Sun Yumeng turned his head to look at Su Weifeng at this time, and said angrily, brother Su, Xiaoshu has poor self-control. You have to control yourself when you are alone with her. Su Weifeng didn't expect Sun Yumeng to come to teach him a lesson, which made him still unable to recover for a while. Chapter 582 Lessons. Zhao Xiaoshu also stared at Sun Yumeng with wide eyes, smacking his lips and said, Sister Yumeng, you actually scolded brother Su? Did I? Sun Yumeng panicked after hearing what Zhao Xiaoshu said. Yes. Zhao Xiaoshu answered without thinking, but suddenly realized that this would be like reporting Sun Yumeng, and hurriedly said to Su Weifeng, brother Su, sister Yumeng is doing this for your own good. Don't blame sister Yumeng. Su Weifeng quickly said, I don't blame Yumeng. I was just suddenly shocked by Yumeng, or rather, I'm used to Yumeng's somewhat silly and cute look. Her tone is so different from your sister Zhuangxuan and Yushan. Sun Yumeng panicked at this time, twisting the corner of her clothes, and said, brother Su, Su Weifeng chuckled, hugged Sun Yumeng, and said, I don't blame you. I just found that if a girl really likes someone, she will scold that person unconsciously, right? Sun Yumeng was even more embarrassed and didn't know how to answer. Lin Zhuangxuan's voice rang out from behind. Yes, a man like you who is not in tune with the world, as your woman, of course she has to keep an eye on you and teach you a lesson all the time. Yumeng, if he does anything wrong, just teach him a lesson and don't indulge his temper. Su Weifeng rolled his eyes and said, Zhuangxuan, everyone has different personalities. Don't let them do things they don't want to do. Lin Zhuangxuan rolled her eyes at Su Weifeng and said, come on, I think you are just afraid that everyone will control you and you will have no status in the family from now on. Su Weifeng nodded in agreement and said with a deliberately bitter face, I'm a man, I'm the head of the family, you can't treat me like this, I will be very embarrassed. Lin Zhuangxuan chuckled, ignored Su Weifeng, and said to Sun Yumeng with a smile, Yumeng, let me tell you, this is because you really regard Weifeng as your boyfriend. Only when a woman is truly in love will she think about the other person in everything. When she thinks about the other person, some of the things the other person does will not be to her liking, and she will naturally scold the other person. This is not a bad thing at all. Zhao Ziaoshu said with some resentment at this time. Sister Zhuangsun, when you say that, it seems that I don't love brother Su enough. I will agree to whatever he says without thinking about it. You. Lin Zhuangsun gently tapped Zhao Ziaoshu's forehead and said, you are just a stupid little cat who blindly follows others. Zhao Ziaoshu laughed and said, you are the ones who think about taking care of brother Su. I'm not as thoughtful as you. I will be a kitten for brother Su, as long as I can make brother Su happy. After laughing for a few words, Su Weifeng could only take a bath alone. Without the burden in his heart, Su Weifeng got along with everyone in this relaxed mentality. The wonderful feeling of being surrounded by beautiful women suddenly emerged, and the happiness in it was really wonderful. In the next few days, as Su Weifeng expected, the ZHU family and the Shu family released the news that the interests could be shared. Almost all the families heard the news and came. They were like sharks that smelled blood, and the blood smell was to go back and divide the interests of the Liu family and the Jin family. Many of these families originally had very good relations with the Jin and Liu families, but in the face of interests, they turned their faces and refused to recognize them. This really proves the saying that there are no eternal friends or eternal enemies, and everything depends on whether the interests are big enough. In the past, everyone thought that the ZHU and Shu families were the ones who were divided up this time, and they were merciless. Now, even if it is the Jin and Liu families, it makes no difference to them. The Jin and Liu families immediately felt a strong pressure, and quickly made the right choice to admit defeat. Now admitting defeat, the family's industry has indeed suffered heavy losses, but they can give up some non-high quality assets, and then keep those assets. In this way, it seems that they have suffered a huge loss, but they can still maintain the foundation of the big family, and will not be completely bankrupt. If they keep resisting, then under the joint suppression of other big families, all their industries will almost be unable to move forward, and such consequences are even more unbearable for them. The ZHU and Shu families immediately mobilized all their people, but the first person was extremely excited. Especially the Shu family. They were only in the middle of Yangcheng. They had just eaten a lot of the Wei family's assets in the past 2 months. Not long ago, they cut the leaks of the Jin family, and also used gambling to fleece many other families. The strength of the Shu family can be said to have doubled. It is definitely the largest family in Yangcheng. Even compared with many families in the provincial capital, it is not much different. This is something they never dreamed of before. Why is this so? The Shu family naturally knows very well in their hearts. It is all Su Weifeng who has brought the Shu family to this height, and it is Xu Lingling who maintains the relationship between their Shu family and Su Weifeng. Therefore, Xu Lingling's current status in the Shu family is that not only her peers, but even the elders have to be polite to her. Not only the Shu family, but even the family members of the entire Yangcheng now have to respect Xu Lingling. For example, Li Zihao and Ko Qingming, when they see Xu Lingling, they are like mice seeing a cat, afraid that Xu Lingling will come to them for revenge. Su Weifeng did not participate in the follow-up of these things. As for the distribution of benefits, he was not interested at all. He did not care how much the two families were willing to give him. But the ZHU family and the Shu family obviously did not dare to give Su Weifeng less. They did not dare to take advantage of this kind of thing. On Friday, when Su Weifeng was driving home, he passed a traffic light. While waiting, Su Weifeng felt something, and looked at the car on the left. The window of the car was not open, but through the dark glass film, Su Weifeng could still vaguely see the people inside. Jin Yuhu. Jin Yuhu looked at Su Weifeng with burning eyes. Su Weifeng also met Jin Yuhu's gaze, and his expression was quite calm. To be frank, he and Jin Yuhu did not have any special hatred. Perhaps, the two of them just had small conflicts that accumulated little by little. Jin Yuhu was indeed a strong person, but in Su Weifeng's eyes, he was still very weak. This time, he just used this method to solve the problem, which was already very gentle. As for whether there will be conflicts with the Jin family next time, it depends on Jin Yuhu. If Jin Yuhu's methods are excessive, Su Weifeng will not be so polite next time. Chapter 583 Taking the Initiative. Jinyu, who suddenly turned his head away without any angry expression, nor did he open the window to say anything harsh. As if he didn't see Su Weifeng, he drove the car directly when the green light came on. Lin Zuangsun, who was sitting next to him, asked in confusion, "Who is over there? You were staring at her just now." "I recognize the wrong person." Su Weifeng smiled slightly. Lin Zuangsun rolled his eyes at Su Weifeng and said, "I thought you saw some beautiful lady. Your eyes were staring straight." Su Weifeng laughed and said, "There are 3 beautiful women in this car. I can't see them all with my own eyes. Do I need to look at others?" Jinyu, whose performance just now made Su Weifeng alert. Under the normal social order, there are 2 types of people who are the most terrifying. One is the one with a bad temper, the kind who is not afraid of death and doesn't care. "Whoever provokes me, I will fight you to the death, regardless of everything, and I will pull you down, even if I have to cut myself." The other type is the kind that is particularly forbearing. They will hide all their emotions and then use the most insidious means to deal with you. The first type, at least you can be on guard. But the second type, this kind of person is the most dangerous, basically hard to guard against. If you let this kind of person think about you, it is really uncomfortable. Su Weifeng felt this dangerous aura on Jinyu, a man who is so rampant. After suffering such a big setback, he did not go crazy to seek revenge, nor did he have an emotional breakdown. When he saw his enemy, he was so calm. This is definitely a ruthless person, a person with a strong will. Feeling the danger of Jinyu, Su Weifeng did not want to tell others about it. With Jinyu's current situation, even if he wants to retaliate, he must wait until Su Weifeng and others are no longer on guard. So this is definitely not something that will happen in a short time. If Su Weifeng told them first, it would only increase their psychological burden, and it would actually be useless. The next day, Su Weifeng and Feng Baoer took a car to the city where Feng Baoer's parents lived. Feng Baoer's parents lived in Ningcheng, which is in the same province as Yangcheng, and the distance from Yangcheng is only more than 300 kilometers. After getting off the taxi, the two stood at the gate of the community, but Feng Baoer was a little hesitant. Su Weifeng smiled and joked, "What's wrong? Are you afraid to go back to your own home?" Feng Baoer's mouth twitched, and she said, "I'm really scared. My dad is very fierce." "Are you afraid of your dad?" Su Weifeng couldn't help but be a little surprised that Feng Baoer, who was fearless, was actually afraid of someone. "Yeah, when he scolds people, he is very fierce, simply." Su Weifeng chuckled and said, "You haven't done anything wrong. What are you afraid of?" Feng Baoer said helplessly, "How can I not do anything wrong? You are already married, and I'm still doing something unclear with you. My father will definitely scold me for not knowing how to behave." Su Weifeng rolled his eyes at Feng Baoer and said, "What is unclear between the two of us? We are very innocent, okay?" Feng Baoer glared and said, "Humph, that time you and I were in the bar, and that situation was seen by many colleagues. They must have told my father about it." Then Feng Baoer sighed again and said, "My dad hates those casual girls the most, and he will definitely scold me." Su Weifeng shook his head and said, "You are not casual. I was just cooperating with you to carry out the task at that time. Let's go. I will help you deal with your father." Feng Baoer had no choice but to nod and take Su Weifeng into the community. Knock on the door. A middle-aged woman who looked quite simple and elegant opened the door. "Mom, I'm back," Feng Baoer said, looking into the room like a little thief. Feng Baoer's mother chuckled and said, "Your dad is in the study. Xiao Su, right? Please come in." Su Weifeng smiled slightly, handed over the gift, and said, "Hello, sister." Feng Baoer's mother and Feng Baoer were both stunned for a moment. Su Weifeng's address was really beyond their expectations. "What did you call me?" Feng Baoer's mother asked with a smile. Su Weifeng smiled slightly and said, "Call me sister. I'm Feng Baoer's master, 1 generation older than her, and naturally I'm the same generation as you. It should be good to call you sister, right?" Feng Baoer's mother was stunned for a moment, then smiled and said, "Now that you put it that way, it seems that there is nothing wrong with it. Please come in." After entering the living room, Feng Baoer's mother asked Su Weifeng to sit down, and a tall man with a square face and a dignified look walked out of the study. Feng Bao's mother immediately said with a smile, "Old Feng, this is Bao's master Zhao Su." Su Weifeng stood up and said with a smile, "Hello, brother Feng." Feng Bao's father did not hear the conversation at the door just now. When he heard this, he immediately stopped, and his expression suddenly became extremely wonderful. "What did you call me?" He asked the same question as his wife. Su Weifeng also said with a smile, "I'm Bao's master, and it seems that I can only call you brother." "Brother." Feng Bao's father's face froze, then snorted and said, "What a good master, sit down." Su Weifeng also sat down calmly. The atmosphere suddenly became a little awkward. Feng Bao lowered her head and was so well behaved that Su Weifeng didn't recognize her. Feng Bao's parents obviously didn't expect Su Weifeng to do this. They were caught off guard for a while. Looking at Su Weifeng, they didn't know how to start the conversation. It was Su Weifeng who spoke first. "Brother Su, sister Su, you have raised a good daughter. My efforts in teaching her were not in vain. In just 1 month, she has achieved such achievements, which is quite beyond my expectation." Feng Bao's father finally came to his senses and said, "I heard that you took her out for training for a month. It seems that you, as a master, have trained her well." Su Weifeng smiled and said, "This is also because Bao has a firm will and the courage to face difficulties. If it were someone else, I'm afraid they would back down after a few days, but she can persist for a month, so she deserves such an effect." Feng Bao's father said, "I didn't expect this. This girl has been wild since she was a child. You have to worry a lot. I'm also happy that I can train such an outstanding disciple. In addition, this time I came, I also want to clarify the misunderstanding. I heard from Bao that brother and sister thought I was Bao's boyfriend. Ha." Su Weifeng took the initiative again, and Feng Bao's heart was pounding at this time. She looked at her parents nervously, and her palms were sweating. Chapter 584, Easily Done. Feng Bao's parents looked a little embarrassed at this time. Feng Bao's father's face soon sank, and he said, "But I heard that you and Bao are too close. If you are his master, it would be even more excessive if you did such a thing." Su Weifeng said, "I guess the intimacy you are talking about is just an incident in a bar. At that time, we were naturally confusing the suspects, and we just took a dislocated approach, just like the kissing scene in the movie. Others saw it as a kiss, but we actually didn't have any contact at all. I'm in this industry, so this kind of thing is really simple for me. By the way." Su Weifeng didn't wait for them to speak, and continued, "You may think that, since I have such strength, why don't I just catch those suspects directly? I don't really want to participate in this matter, and I don't want to expose my strength." Feng Bao's parents were unable to refute it at once. Su Weifeng's face was serious again, and he said, "Brother Feng, if Bao is not my apprentice, even if you doubt it, I will not come to explain. Bao is a very good girl, and she will definitely make great achievements in the police in the future. Others can doubt her character, but as parents, you can't distrust your daughter like this." Feng Bao's heart was hanging in her throat again. Su Weifeng was directly confronting her father. Her father has been in the police for many years, and is now the deputy director of the municipal bureau. Who dares to confront him like this? Haha. Feng Bao's father suddenly laughed loudly. Feng Bao jumped up and stammered, "Dad. I. But he couldn't say anything. Feng Bao's father waved his hand gently, and his tone became much gentler. He said, "Don't be like this. Dad won't say anything to you today, and I won't say anything to you in the future." Ah. Feng Bao was stunned. Feng Bao's father looked at his daughter, smiled slightly, and said, "I used to be strict with you. I always thought that you were too ambitious and didn't have such strong ability, so you were not trustworthy in doing things. But now your master has taught you so well, and you have far exceeded my expectations of you, so I will not care about you anymore. You have grown up. The sky is high and the birds fly freely, and the sea is wide and the fish jump freely. In the future, you can walk your own way." Feng Bao looked at her parents in a daze. Her lips suddenly moved twice, and then her eyes turned red, and tears flowed out involuntarily. Feng Bao's mother said lovingly, "Silly child, this is not a happy thing. Why are you crying?" "No. Feng Bao wiped her eyes vigorously and said, I didn't cry, I was just too happy. The tears still kept flowing out. Feng Bao's father said with a smile, my dear, come and cook 2 dishes. I will have a drink with Xiao Su today. Feng Bao smiled and pulled Feng Bao and said, okay, Bao, come and help me. The atmosphere was even better. After Feng Bao's father talked with Su Weifeng, his impression of Su Weifeng became better and better. Although the military and the police are 2 lines, there is no big difference in essence. Knowing that Su Weifeng was a colonel who was transferred to civilian work, and was also a special forces soldier, Feng Bao's father looked up to Su Weifeng. Talking about some current affairs, and discussing professional matters, they also have a lot in common. However, when talking about Su Weifeng's training methods for Feng Bao's father's face was still a little ugly. This is his precious daughter, but she actually did such a dangerous thing, which made him scared. Feng Bao was the happiest today. During the meal, she toasted Su Weifeng again and again, especially after drinking 2 glasses of wine. She didn't look like an apprentice at all. Feng Bao's father glared at her and said, Bao, this is your master, you can't act nonsense. Su Weifeng laughed and said, brother Feng, this is nothing. I also don't like the kind of disciples who are honest in front of me and hide their nature. That will make me feel unreal. I dare not teach them. Feng Bao had Su Weifeng's support, so she was much bolder. She pouted at her father and said, that's right, my master doesn't care. How can you force me to be like a good baby? Feng Bao's father glared at her again and said, there must be rules for everything. How can you be so disrespectful? Even if your master is not much older than you, but he taught you skills, he is almost the same as your father. Feng Bao's mouth twitched. She glanced at Su Weifeng and said, I have an extra cheap father, but what about my mother? Puff, you bastard. Feng Bao's mother spat out a mouthful of drink, wiped it, and slapped Feng Bao in the face. Feng Bao chuckled and said, I was just joking. I still respect my master in my heart. In the future, I will definitely go to see my master and his wife during festivals. I still know the rules of a disciple. Su Weifeng said with a stern face, you said it. If you don't go, I will expel you from the sect. Of course. Feng Bao replied with a smile. Seeing Feng Bao's flattering look, Feng Bao's parents smiled even more. After drinking, Feng Bao and Su Weifeng left home together. As soon as she walked out of the building, Feng Bao let out a long breath and said with relief, I'm finally free. I thought I would be scolded when I came back this time. Su Weifeng chuckled and said, look at your lack of ability, and you have no confidence in me. Feng Bao chuckled and said, yeah, I really didn't expect you to be so powerful. Even my dad has no tricks in front of you. If I had known it would be so easy, my worries these days would have been unnecessary. Su Weifeng said, okay, I'll go to the hotel by myself. You don't have to accompany me. Feng Bao immediately said, no, that won't work. My mother specifically asked me to buy some local specialties for you to bring back. They should have visited you at your home, but they asked you to come and explain. It's really rude. Su Weifeng smiled and said, do you need to be so polite? You know I don't like these things. You are a big boss, you are rich, but this is what my parents wanted. Besides, if I don't do it, they will definitely complain when I come back, so just pity me and let me do it. Okay, there is still some time, then I will give you a chance to show your ability. Feng Bao smiled happily and hugged Su Weifeng's arm. The parents in the room upstairs looked down from the window at this time and saw this scene. They looked at each other and frowned slightly. Chapter 585 This is too unreasonable. By the way, you helped me win a lot this time, and I haven't rewarded you yet. Su Weifeng and Feng Bao bought some things, and Su Weifeng said with a smile as they looked at a high-end shopping mall in front of them. Feng Bao raised her chin and said, yes, you have to reward me. I helped you win a bet of $1 billion, and I have nothing. Su Weifeng laughed and said, people like you are not good at managing money at all. Don't say that. I won't give you anything. I will put a company under your name in the future. When the time comes, your annual dividend will be enough for you to enjoy. Really? Feng Bao's eyes widened immediately. Su Weifeng said casually, of course it's true, but the assets acquired this time have not been sorted out. You can think about what kind of company you like first, and then I will directly put them under your name. Feng Bao grinned and said, I was just joking. You let me vent my anger, and I'm already satisfied. How can I want these things? What's more, you are risking a loss of 1 billion. How can I ask for any reward? And, you know my character. I just need enough money to spend. I don't have enough money to spend that much. I'm not asking you to manage it. You take the shares and divide the money directly when the time comes. Besides, who is afraid of money? When you have money, you can live a rich life. For example, you can buy a more domineering car. This will suit your personality. Buy a car. Feng Bao's eyes suddenly lit up. Su Weifeng said with a smile, you hit the nail on the head. Feng Bao chuckled and said, yes, I really like that kind of domineering car, but I just think about it and never thought that I could afford it myself. Su Weifeng said with a smile, okay, I will buy you a car as a reward first, and I will give it to you later about the company's business. Thank you, master. Feng Bao smiled. She was not a hypocritical person. She knew that Su Weifeng had a lot of money, so giving her a car was not a big deal. The most important thing was that this car was also a peace of mind. After all, she also contributed to the bet this time. As for the company's shares, she didn't care at all. Su Weifeng pointed to the side and said, hey, speaking of buying a car, there is also a 4S store here. Do you want to go and have a look? Okay. Feng Bao's eyes lit up, and she pulled Su Weifeng over there. This was a Mercedes-Benz store. After Feng Bao entered, her eyes were obviously looking at the G-Class. Su Weifeng smiled and said, why, do you like this car? Feng Bao grinned and said, I like it, but it's too expensive. Let's just take a look. Su Weifeng raised his chin and deliberately said, what's the big deal? Su Weifeng, don't have a G-Class. Wouldn't that be embarrassing? Let's take a look at this today. Feng Bao shrank her neck and said, it's okay to take a look, but just take a look. The two of them went over, and Feng Bao got into the car. She liked it so much. In fact, she had liked this car for a long time. She didn't know how many times she had dreamed of having such a car, but she knew that she was just thinking about it. Although her father was an official of high rank, he was upright and honest. In addition to the normal salary and bonus, he never took a penny more. Therefore, although the family conditions were okay, it was impossible for them to buy a luxury car worth more than 1 million yuan. As soon as she got into the car, Feng Bao touched everything here and there, feeling a bit like Granny Liu entering the Grand View Garden. Su Weifeng couldn't help but smile and said, don't you like this car? Haven't you seen it before? Feng Bao smiled and said, no, I can't afford it. Hey, why are you still here if you can't afford it? Get down quickly, I want to see the car. Feng Bao didn't close the door when she was looking at the car. At this time, a man and a woman came to the car and wanted to see the sample car. They wanted to wait, but when they heard Feng Bao say this, the woman immediately said something impatiently. Although Feng Bao had a bad temper, she got out of the car immediately after hearing this. In her mind, it was normal for others to give up their seats if they wanted to buy a car. After all, she was not buying one, at least not today. Originally, this matter would have passed. But when Feng Bao passed by her, the woman curled her lips and said sarcastically, I admire these people. They can't afford luxury cars, but they come to see them, as if they can afford them. Haha. The man laughed and said, there's nothing we can do. They need to take a photo and post it on their moments, to show how well they are doing now. How boring. Is it fun to pretend like this? Why are you dithering? Get out of the way. Feng Bao was just a little slow, and the woman actually pushed Feng Bao. Feng Bao was also furious at what the two people said. When the woman's hand pushed her, she used a clever force and turned her body to get out of the way. But the woman's push was in vain, and she fell forward involuntarily, and her head hit the car door. Coincidentally, her head hit the corner of the car door. With a thud, the woman screamed, covered her forehead with both hands, and tears flowed out of the pain. This move was really well done. Even Su Weifeng had to praise it in his heart. But the man and woman were not happy at this time. The woman covered her head with one hand, pointed at Feng Bao with the other hand, and said in a sharp voice, you dare to hit me. Feng Bao snorted and said, I didn't hit you, you pushed me and bumped into me. The woman became even angrier and said in a sharp voice, if you don't hide, would I have bumped into you? Feng Bao raised the corner of her mouth and said, what, you pushed me, so I have to let you push me? Nonsense. The man glared and shouted, you poor guy, my girlfriend pushed you, it's your honor, you have to let her push you, why are you hiding? Su Weifeng and Feng Bao looked at each other immediately. Although they were used to big storms, they had never seen such a shameless person. The woman was even more arrogant and shouted angrily, you're right, I pushed you, why did you hide? Now I bump into you, can you afford to pay for it? If I don't vent my anger today, don't even think about leaving. Feng Bao frowned and said, then, how are you going to vent your anger? The woman raised her chin and said, you, bump your head against me now, and then kneel down, and admit your mistake, and this matter will be over. Chapter 586 Seduction. What if I don't? Feng Bao's face had turned cold. No? The woman sneered and said, you'd better take back what you said. I'm being very polite to you now. If you don't know your place anymore, it won't be that simple. Feng Bao suddenly laughed and said, okay, then I'll see how you make this more complicated. Everyone. The people in the store immediately came over and stood between the two of them. One of them, who looked like a manager, said with a smile, you are all people of status who can look at cars here. How can you hurt your relationship because of such a small matter? The woman immediately said angrily, what are you talking about? How can they be considered people of status? They are just two poor guys who can't afford to buy a car. They came here to take a picture to show off. You are saying that they are the same as us. Are you insulting us? The manager's face suddenly turned black and said, dear guest, no matter what, when you come to our store, you are our distinguished guest. So, if you can buy a car today, we will give you a discount, which is our compensation to you. The manager is also a smart person. Although this matter seems to have nothing to do with them, but someone quarreled in their store. If it goes on forever, their store will have to provide evidence and so on, which is troublesome. Now we give a discount. If we can sell a car by the way, it will be a good thing. The woman raised her chin and said, do we need your discount? Let me tell you, my boyfriend is the vice president of Jinxing Company, with an annual salary of several million. If we lack your money, this girl will have to be injured in the same way as I'm injured today. She must kneel down and apologize to me, otherwise this matter will not be over. Feng Bao snorted and said, then you can't be over. The woman gritted her teeth and said, okay, you poor guy, you are competing with me, right? Do you think we can't deal with you? I tell you, my boyfriend can kill both of you with just one phone call. Su Weifeng narrowed his eyes, looked at the man, and said, are you the vice president of Jinxing Company? Yes. I'm Wang Jinyu. The man was in his 30s, and when he raised his chin at this time, he really had a bit of aura. Su Weifeng nodded and said, Jinxin actually has a vice president like you. It's ridiculous. What do you mean? The man stared at Su Weifeng. Su Weifeng snorted and said, I think Jinxing Company should not use a vice president like you. PFFT. The woman laughed and said, what, are you going to brag again? Tell me that you are a major shareholder of Jinxing Company, or you know the boss of Jinxing Company, and then you want to fire my boyfriend? Su Weifeng smiled slightly and said, I really mean that. The corners of the woman's mouth almost turned up to her ears, and she said disdainfully, you are really good at bragging. Have you read too many novels? Su Weifeng snorted, ignored the woman, and took out his phone and called. As soon as the call was connected, Su Weifeng said directly, I'm at the Mercedes-Benz 4S store, come here. The woman glared and said, damn, are you trying to seduce someone? Husband, find someone quickly, I have to vent my anger today. Wang Jinyu also snorted, looked at Su Weifeng with disdain, and said, boy, you really pissed me off. Then he picked up the phone. Xiaodong, I'm at the Mercedes-Benz 4S store. There are two people here pretending to be cool with me. Find a few people to come over. After saying that, Wang Jinyu also hung up the phone. His girlfriend immediately raised her chin proudly and said, humph, it's too late for you to regret now. You'll have a hard time this time. Su Weifeng just smiled faintly and said to Feng Baoer, let's go in and have a cup of tea. Feng Baoer agreed and then went straight into a reception room here with Su Weifeng. Someone in the store quickly followed in. You two, you better leave quickly. If you start a fight, no matter you win or lose, it won't be a good thing in the end. Su Weifeng said calmly, it doesn't matter. Don't be so stubborn. Jinx & Company is not a small company, and their vice president is not simple either. Feng Bao glared and said, you don't need to say more. We want to see how arrogant they are. We are abiding by the law. If they dare to mess around, I will arrest them directly. Arrest? The two employees who came in were startled, and then one of them said cautiously, you are a policeman? Yes. Feng Bao raised her chin. The two shop assistants looked at each other and secretly said, oh no. Although Wang Jinyu is rich and powerful, it would be troublesome if he found someone to settle the matter like a fight. No wonder the two were so calm. It turned out that there was a policeman. One of them hurriedly walked out and told Wang Jinyu that it was a good opportunity to stop him from calling people so that the matter could be suppressed to some extent. At this moment, Su Weifeng's cell phone rang. Su Weifeng answered the call. After hearing what the other party said, he stood up and said to Feng Baoer, let's go, someone is coming. The two walked out and saw three people running in a hurry. Wang Jinyu saw the three people at a glance. He was startled at first, then hurriedly walked up to them and said, Boss Sun, Boss Wu, Director He, why are you here? Boss Sun was Sun Bin, the boss of Jinx & Company. He just nodded to Wang Jinyu and then looked around the store. Boss Sun, what are you doing? Wang Jinyu asked cautiously. We are looking for someone. Sun Bin said lightly, then his face was happy and he walked directly past Wang Jinyu. Wang Jinyu suddenly had a bad premonition in his heart. He looked in the direction where the three Sunbins were walking and then saw Su Weifeng and Feng Baoer. Not good. Wang Jinyu wailed in his heart and then yelled in his heart, it's not him, it's not him. But what disappointed Wang Jinyu was that Sun Bin and the other three walked in front of Su Weifeng, all stopped, and then saw Sun Bin bowed proudly. Just seeing this action, Wang Jinyu felt that he was not feeling well, and his face suddenly turned as hen. Old husband. Wang Jinyu's girlfriend also saw this scene. Her face suddenly turned pale, and she stammered, you scumbag. Wang Jinyu cursed, and then hurriedly ran to Sun Bin and the others. Then he heard Sun Bin say in an extremely respectful tone, Mr. Su, we are late, please don't blame us. And the man who made Wang Jinyu think he was a poor ghost just nodded to Sun Bin at this time and said, it's okay, I just asked you to deal with something. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 587. I'm the major shareholder. Sun Bin said quickly. Mr. Su, just say it. I will do my best. Wang Jinyu was really panicked at this time, but it also stimulated his reaction ability. He rushed forward and said anxiously, Mr. Sun, Mr. Su and I had a misunderstanding just now. Misunderstanding? Sun Bin immediately turned his head and glared at Sun Bin. Wang Jinyu pondered in his heart. He had to know who this man surnamed Su was. If he had little relationship with the company, even if he was powerful, he would probably be able to solve the problem by apologizing. So he had to find out who the other party was first, and hurriedly asked carefully, Mr. Sun, this Mr. Su is. Sun Bin was also nervous at this time. After all, Wang Jinyu was his subordinate. If he caused trouble, he would definitely be responsible. He hurriedly said, this Mr. Su Weifeng is the largest shareholder of our company. The largest shareholder? Wang Jinyu felt as if an apple was stuck in his throat, almost choking him to death. Even though he had thought that Su Weifeng's status was high enough, he never thought that it was this status that would definitely control his life and death. He actually offended the company's largest shareholder. Even if he was the company's vice president, to put it bluntly, he was still an employee. If he offended the boss, how could it be good? This jinxing company was actually a company of the Liu family in the province, with assets of more than 1 billion yuan. The Liu family lost so much, so they gave up the shares of this company. ZHU Xiaoxuan thought that this company still had great potential, so he suggested that Su Weifeng keep the shares of this company. Su Weifeng came here this time just to meet with the senior management here and reassure them. President Su. Wang Jinyu stuttered and shouted, then suddenly grabbed his girlfriend and raised his hand to slap her in the face. This was really a sudden move, no one expected it, and it immediately scared Sunbin and the others. Why did you hit me? The woman was stunned by the beating, but due to her nature and her unforgiving character, she immediately covered her face and screamed angrily. Wang Jinyu gritted his teeth and said, "Why did I hit you? You idiot, you even dared to offend Mr. Su. Do you know that this is the largest shareholder of our company, and also our chairman?" Chairman? The woman finally didn't dare to scream at this time. She stared at Su Weifeng in a daze, and then looked at Feng Baoer, and almost cried. Sunbin's face turned black, and he immediately glared and shouted, "Wang Jinyu, you are so bold, why don't you apologize to Mr. Su?" Yes. Mr. Su, I didn't recognize the great man, and I didn't manage my woman well. I was blind, so I fell in love with this woman. From now on, this woman has nothing to do with me. Wang Jinyu, you bastard, are you going to dump me? When the woman heard this, her original fear and terror disappeared instantly, and she roared at Wang Jinyu angrily. Wang Jinyu glared and shouted, "That's right, I'm going to dump you. I was blind to fall for you. Now, immediately, get out of here." At this time, in order to keep his position, how could he not be willing to give up a woman? As long as his position was there, he would never lack women in the future. He had finally climbed to this position. If he was kicked out of Jinxing Company, it would be too difficult for him to find such a good position somewhere else. Okay, Wang Jinyu, you wait for me. I won't let you have an easy time. The woman also gritted her teeth and walked out. Sunbin coughed dryly at this time and said, "Boss Su, look at this matter. I also failed to discipline my subordinates, but President Sun is also. After all, as a subordinate for many years, Sunbin still wanted to protect Wang Jinyu. But at this moment, several people rushed in, shouting as soon as they came in. Boss Wang, which bastard dared to mess with you? Let's destroy him." Wang Jinyu felt like dying, and quickly winked at those guys to get out. But those guys didn't see what he meant at this time, and came over and said carelessly, "Boss Wang, there is nothing in this area that we can't handle. Whoever it is, I will let him know how serious the consequences of offending you are today." Su Weifeng smiled faintly and said, "What a great prestige." Sunbin was immediately furious and shouted, "Wang Jinyu, you are so brave. Get out right now. From now on, you are no longer the vice president of Jinxing Company." Wang Jinyu knelt down with a plop and said anxiously, Boss Sun, please give me another chance. President Su, I really know I was wrong. I will never dare to do it again. Please let me go." Su Weifeng didn't even look at him, and didn't say anything. Sunbin immediately understood what Su Weifeng meant, and kicked Wang Jinyu to the ground, saying, "Get lost. You'd better disappear from my sight immediately, otherwise you will bear the consequences." Wang Jinyu knew that this time it was really irreversible. He turned his head and looked at his girlfriend who was watching the joke not far away, and a surge of anger surged up. "It's all because of you, this woman." With a roar, Wang Jinyu rushed over like crazy. The woman was also not vague, scratching with both hands. Although she was not as strong as Wang Jinyu, she did not show weakness, and fought with Wang Jinyu. Those who were called by Wang Jinyu finally felt that something was wrong, and rushed over, and took Wang Jinyu and the woman away. "Mr. Su." Sunbin laughed dryly, and he was also guilty at this time. Su Weifeng said lightly, "In the future, when selecting people, we should not only look at their abilities, but also their personalities." Yes. Sunbin nodded repeatedly, feeling very uneasy. Su Weifeng said, "Okay, you guys go back first. I'll come over and talk to you later." Sunbin didn't dare to leave. His mind was working quickly, and he immediately said, "Mr. Su, are you going to buy a car?" "I'm just showing cars to my friends." Su Weifeng replied casually. Sunbin hurriedly said, which one do you like? We'll decide immediately, and we'll buy it for this beautiful lady right away. Su Weifeng knew that these people were afraid of being blamed by him, and if he didn't agree, they would feel even more uneasy. Now that he has just taken over the company, he can't come to manage it, so these people won't move casually, and it's necessary to reassure them. Nodding, Su Weifeng said, okay, that's it. Sunbin immediately breathed a sigh of relief, and hurriedly bowed his body, with a smile on his face, and said to Feng Baoer, Madam, which car do you like? Feng Baoer opened her mouth, and suddenly didn't know how to answer. What's going on? Is he going to buy her a car? Wait. What does the title of Madam mean? Chapter 588 Guilty Heart. Su Weifeng also couldn't help but look gloomy. This Sunbin obviously misunderstood and thought Feng Baoer was his woman. But it was no wonder. Su Weifeng brought a woman to buy a car, and she was a pretty girl. If she wasn't a woman, it seemed that there was no other relationship that would make this happen. And he didn't need to explain to them. He said lightly, just take a look at the G-Class. Sunbin immediately said, okay, manager, we want to order a G-Class, and we want the highest configuration. Okay. The manager was overjoyed and said hurriedly, we have a car in stock here. Please take a look at the color and interior, if you like it. Feng Baoer's mouth twitched. At this time, she really felt that her brain was not enough. She stammered, okay. Everyone went to take a look at the car. Feng Baoer still liked it very much. Looking at Sunbin and others going through the procedures and paying the money, Feng Baoer stammered to Su Weifeng in a low voice, buy it now? Yes. You are not satisfied? Su Weifeng asked with a smile. Satisfied. Feng Baoer nodded repeatedly, then chuckled and said, it just feels a bit dreamy. Su Weifeng smiled and said, look at your achievements. Feng Baoer chuckled and said, I'm just a salaried worker. I really never thought that I could afford such an expensive car. It's more than 1.8 million. I don't know if I can earn so much money in my entire life. Oh, if my parents see me driving this car, will they think too much? Su Weifeng said nonchalantly, just tell them the truth. You call me master, and giving you some gifts is nothing. Oh. Feng Baoer suddenly tilted her head and looked at Su Weifeng, then whispered, just now they called me Madam, why didn't you explain? Su Weifeng said casually, there's no need. Feng Baoer's mouth twitched, then she bit her lip and said, you don't really have this idea, do you? What do you think? Su Weifeng turned his head and looked at Feng Baoer with a smile. Feng Baoer hesitated for a moment, then smiled and said, you are too lazy to explain to them. When we were on the grassland, I took the initiative, but you didn't want it. I knew you didn't have this idea. Su Weifeng couldn't help but laugh and said, why, if I had this idea, would you dare to agree? Aren't you afraid that your father would beat you to death? Feng Baoer stuck out her tongue and said, this is true. This is not a special occasion and special environment. Now I'm much more rational, and I won't do such a thing. That's better. Money makes things easier. Before it was time to get off work, Feng Baoer had already driven out of the 4S store. Feng Baoer sent Su Weifeng to the hotel. Sunbin and others followed to talk to Su Weifeng, and Feng Baoer went home directly. After entering the house, Feng Baoer wanted to hide the car keys, but she finally took them in her hand. Sooner or later, her parents would know about this. Now, while Su Weifeng has just been recognized by his parents, nothing serious will happen. If she hides it, it will be easy for her parents to scold her later. Dad, Mom. Feng Baoer felt guilty when she saw her parents sitting in the living room, and her voice was quite low. Come and sit down. Feng Baoer's mother called her daughter and said, you are so cautious. What mistake have you made? Feng Baoer laughed dryly, then put the car keys on the coffee table and said, I just went out with the master, and he bought me a car. Buy a car? Feng Baoer's father frowned for a moment, then took another look at the car keys, snorted, and said, Mercedes-Benz. It's really generous, we'll give him the price. Feng Baoer hurriedly said, no, we don't have that much money. Feng Baoer's father's face sank, and he said, Humph, although your dad is penniless, and didn't make much money for you, he can still take out hundreds of thousands. Feng Bao's mouth twitched and said, "Dad, this is not an ordinary Mercedes-Benz E-Class or C-Class. S-Class?" Feng Bao's father's face darkened, and he said, "If it's the lowest level one with a million or so, I can barely take it out." "Not really." Feng Bao lowered his head to his chest and said carefully, It's a G-Class, 1,800,000. Feng Bao's father's face suddenly turned as black as charcoal. His lips trembled twice. Then he slammed the coffee table and said angrily, "You are such a bastard. What did I teach you usually? He bought it for you, and you want it?" Feng Bao's mother hurriedly said, "Old Feng, don't be angry. This was given to you by Bao's master, not by anyone else." Feng Bao lowered her head and said, "We just went to take a look, and the result." Then she hurriedly recounted what happened, but she naturally did not dare to mention the fact that those people misunderstood her as Mrs. Sui Feng. Hearing this, Feng Bao's father's expression eased a little, and he said unhappily, "I asked you to buy him some things, but you accepted someone's car, and it was worth more than 1.8 billion. People will ask me why my daughter can drive such a good car. How should I answer?" Feng Bao's mother rolled her eyes at her husband and said, "I think you're overthinking this matter. Xiao Su is not the kind of person who wants you to do things for him." Bao also said that he only holds shares in the company here, and he will not participate in the management here. Moreover, he is Bao's master. It is normal for a master to give some benefits to his apprentice. Feng Bao's father snorted and said, "It's normal, but I'm in this position. It's easy to be criticized." Feng Bao's mother said, "This is a normal source, and you didn't seek personal gain for them. Why are you worrying about it? If you become a director, your daughter can't contact any rich people. As long as we are upright, what should we be afraid of?" Feng Bao's father was speechless after what his wife said. Then he sighed and said, "I'm not only worried about this, I'm also worried that Sui Feng and Bao have too much contact like this. What if something happens again?" Feng Bao said quickly, "Dad, you can rest assured. We have lived on the grassland for more than half a month. We two women slept in a tent with him, and he didn't do anything bad. If he really had any ideas about me, he would have taken me down long ago." Feng Bao's parents looked at Feng Bao in surprise. Sui Feng talked to them about the thrilling training on the grassland, but didn't mention a word about life. His daughter actually slept in a tent with a man for a month, and then there was another woman. Chapter 589 Going out with Sun Yumeng. The next day, Feng Bao drove to the hotel to pick up Sui Feng. On the way back, Feng Bao drove her newly bought Mercedes-Benz G-Class on the highway, so excited. "When I went home last night, my parents questioned me a lot. They still doubt that I have a relationship with you." Sui Feng saw Feng Bao's expression and knew that nothing was wrong, so he smiled and asked, "Don't you doubt me now?" "No longer doubt me. I said we slept in a tent for a month, and you didn't touch me." "They all doubted whether you were sick." "Are you sick?" Sui Feng glared at her and said, "I really want to throw you out of the car." Feng Bao laughed and said, "But I'm really curious too. Men are animals with lower bodies. You said that Yushan and I are both good looking, right? We accompany you every day, but you don't do anything. If you are not sick, what else can happen to you?" Sui Feng said unhappily, "Others may not know whether I'm sick or not, but you can know it?" Feng Bao's smile froze for a moment. "Yes, others may not know, but she must know." That time in the bar, even though we were separated by clothes, she could feel it very clearly. Feng Bao laughed dryly and said, "Then I really can't figure it out. You were so bad back then, but why did you become like a monk later?" Sui Feng really felt it was a bit difficult to answer. After thinking for a while, he said, "You didn't have the idea of taking responsibility for your relationship at that time. Now you have it, so I can't mess around." Feng Bao rolled her eyes and said, "It seems that you were playing with me at that time." Sui Feng laughed and said, "When you say that, I seem quite shameless." "You are shameless to begin with." Feng Bao glared, but she felt a little depressed. This depression made Feng Bao a little puzzled. Why did she secretly hope that Sui Feng would continue to do bad things to her? Now this serious look made her feel unhappy. However, Feng Bao's emotions came and went quickly, especially the feeling of driving a G-Class, which immediately made her put aside all her worries. more than 300 kilometers. In less than 3 hours, the two had returned to Yangcheng. After staying at home for a day, Su Weifeng went out again. This time he did not go out alone, but with Sun Yumeng. Last time, he promised his cousin Li Xiaofeng to go to his village and invest in him. Even if it was just a show, he had to go to investigate instead of giving him the money directly. Of course, Su Weifeng's main purpose was to go to the mountains to find the herbs he needed. As for why he brought Sun Yumeng, this was discussed by Lin Zhuangxun, Zhao Xiaoshu and Sun Yumeng. Among the three of them, the one who had the most intimate contact with Su Weifeng was undoubtedly Lin Zhuangxun. Now that Lin Zhuangxun was with Su Weifeng, it was basically difficult to trigger Su Weifeng's recovery unless there was more intimate contact. Zhao Xiaoshu also had several interactions with Su Weifeng and had a lot of intimate relationships. Although Sun Yumeng had known Su Weifeng for a long time and had a lot of contact with him, Sun Yumeng had always adhered to her duties, fearing that she would do something to let Lin Zhuangxun down, so she had the least physical contact with Su Weifeng. Moreover, her face was still very tender. At home, she was too embarrassed to have any intimate actions with Su Weifeng. This time, it was just right for Su Weifeng and Sun Yumeng to have some space to spend time together in private. Before coming, Su Weifeng had already called Li Xiaofeng. Li Xiaofeng went to the station to pick him up. When he heard that Li Xiaofeng was going to take a taxi, Su Weifeng directly chose to rent an off-road jeep. This made Li Xiaofeng very embarrassed. Li Xiaofeng scratched his head, looking embarrassed, and said, "Brother, I'm so sorry to let you rent a car by yourself." Su Weifeng smiled and said, "We are relatives, it's awkward to say these things. I know that the transportation where you are seems to be inconvenient, and taxis are too popular. It's more convenient to rent a car." Li Xiaofeng looked at Sun Yumeng, but was a little puzzled. Su Weifeng patted Li Xiaofeng on the shoulder and said, "This is my secretary." Although Li Xiaofeng's family lived in the mountains, he was still a village chief. After hearing what Su Weifeng said, he had roughly guessed the relationship between Su Weifeng and Sun Yumeng, and hurriedly said, "I understand, I'm tight-lipped." Then he said to Sun Yumeng, "Hello, sister-in-law." Su Weifeng laughed and didn't explain. He came out with Sun Yumeng because he wanted to have contact with Sun Yumeng, so he naturally wouldn't avoid some intimate contact. Sun Yumeng's pretty face flushed, twisted the corner of her clothes, and whispered, "Hello." Although she was very shy, the word sister-in-law still made Sun Yumeng feel sweet. This could be regarded as an identification of identity. The road in the county was still good, but after driving more than 20 kilometers, the road was much worse. The car was shaking violently, and Sun Xiaofeng immediately introduced, "Our county is originally a poor county. The county does not have enough funds to build a highway here, and the economy of our township and village is even worse. This dirt road was built by everyone's money a few years ago, but it has been badly damaged in recent years." Su Weifeng said, "It is much better than before, but if your village wants to develop, this road must be repaired. Otherwise, even if there are good things, they can't be transported out." Li Xiaofeng smiled bitterly and said, "Where can we get so much money? Even if it's just to build a simple highway, it's so long, it won't work without 1,000,000 or 800,000. Su Weifeng smiled slightly and said, "Let's take a look later. If I feel that the investment value here is good, I will invest in building a road for you." Li Xiaofeng's eyes lit up, but he immediately said, "Brother, this investment is so huge, and it's not built for our own village. It's too much of a loss. Haha, so I said I have to see if your village can bring me enough benefits." After more than half an hour of tossing and turning, the car finally arrived in the village and stopped directly at the door of Li Xiaofeng's house. "Brother, I can only ask you to live in my house. The conditions are not good. I'm really sorry." Li Xiaofeng said apologetically, after letting Su Weifeng and Sun Yumeng into the house. Then he looked at Sun Yumeng and said apologetically, "I didn't know that my sister-in-law would come, so I didn't prepare a mattress for you." Sun Yumeng hurriedly said, "It's okay, I'm not that squeamish." Then she looked at the house, which was only the east and west rooms. It was estimated that she would live in the same room with Su Weifeng tonight. When she thought of this, her face couldn't help but get hot. Chapter 590. My sister-in-law is very gentle. Where are the uncle and aunt? Su Weifeng asked, after taking a look. Li Xiaofeng said hurriedly, they knew you were coming, so they went to live at my eldest brother's house. Su Weifeng nodded, which was more convenient. Li Xiaofeng said again, you sit down first, I'll get you some water to wash your faces. There is no running water here, and everyone uses a well at home. Although Sun Yumeng's home is also a village, her home is only in the suburbs, so normal running water and other things are normal. She is really curious about everything here. After washing her face, Sun Yumeng said, the water is very cool and clear. Li Xiaofeng said, there are no factories and mines nearby, so the groundwater is not polluted. It's pretty good. Sun Yumeng said again, can I drink some? Li Xiaofeng hurriedly said, no, the groundwater here is still relatively hard. We who live here are used to it. It's okay to drink it, but if you drink it, it will easily get a stomach ache. It's better to boil it and drink it. Su Weifeng said, Xiaofeng is right. It's better not to drink cold water casually. Sun Yumeng stuck out her tongue and said embarrassedly, I'm just a little curious. I heard that the water in the mountains is sweet. Li Xiaofeng said again, brother, sister-in-law, you guys rest here first. I'll go to the village committee. After Li Xiaofeng left, Sun Yumeng said a little worriedly, he is your relative. Will he tell your uncle and aunt later? Su Weifeng said, no, he is the village chief after all. How can he not understand this? Oh. Sun Yumeng breathed a sigh of relief. Su Weifeng took Sun Yumeng's hand and said apologetically, I'm so sorry that I had to hide this and let you suffer. Sun Yumeng quickly held Su Weifeng's hand and said, brother Su, don't think so. I'm very satisfied now. As long as I can be with you, I will be happy every day. Su Weifeng hugged Sun Yumeng and said, you are just a silly girl. You only know how to give and don't know how to ask for it. Sun Yumeng looked up with a sweet smile on her face and said, I do, brother Su. Your kindness to me is what I ask for. It is November now. The weather is already very cold, and Su Weifeng took Sun Yumeng into the house. However, it was also quite cold inside the house, so Su Weifeng simply hugged Sun Yumeng, which made Sun Yumeng feel indescribably sweet. After a while, Li Xiaofeng came back. There were two people who came back with him. One was Zhao Dabao, the village party secretary in his 50s, and the other was a woman in her 30s, Song Li, the village accountant. They all knew that Su Weifeng was coming here to investigate investment, so they looked at him like the god of wealth, and they seemed a little restrained. Su Weifeng exchanged pleasantries with them, and the village party secretary told them about the situation in the village. There was basically no income in the village, no village-run factories, and no places to rent to others. In addition, it was all mountains, and there was no flat land for growing crops. Originally, everyone lived off the mountains, but in recent years, the mountains have been closed for afforestation, and hunting is prohibited, so they have not made any progress. However, there are still some things that are more abundant here. One is wild vegetables, which can naturally be picked at will. The people in the village usually pick them, dry them, and then carry them out to sell, but the utilization rate is very low. Another thing is that there is a kind of pear that is abundant in the mountains. This pear is not big and a little sour. No one buys it when it is taken out, so it basically rots in the mountains every year. Li Xiaofeng said at this time, brother, our idea is to set up a beverage factory and make our mountain pears into beverages. Although pears are a bit sour, they are still rich in nutrients. We have already done tests, so the beverages we make must be very nutritious. As long as we adjust the taste, it should be feasible. Su Weifeng nodded and said, this is a good idea. Fruit juice drinks are selling quite well now, and the price is high and the profit is also large. Seeing Su Weifeng's approval, Li Xiaofeng couldn't help but said excitedly, yes, I went to other fruit juice beverage factories to learn. From the purchase of raw materials to how to produce and how to sell, I have done a lot of research. This is what I sorted out. You can take a look. Su Weifeng took it and flipped through it casually, then handed it to Sun Yumeng, saying, after a quick look, it feels like a lot of effort has been put in. Xiaofeng, you really care about the village. The old party secretary Xiao Dabao hurriedly said, Xiao Feng is indeed thinking about the village, but although this matter looks good, it has not found a boss to invest money, which makes Xiao Feng anxious. Su Weifeng smiled and said, okay, let's take a closer look at this. If it works, we'll make a deal. As for wild vegetables, I think we can do it together. These things are easier to handle. We just need to get some fresh keeping and sealing equipment to produce them. In fact, Su Weifeng could have agreed to it right away. The total investment was not much, but if he agreed directly, it would make Li Xiaofeng and the others feel that he was too hasty, so he deliberately delayed it to make himself look more serious. Sure enough, Li Xiaofeng and Xiao Dabao were a little nervous. Su Weifeng didn't say much and changed the topic. Everyone chatted for a while, and then Xiao Dabao and Song Li left. Li Xiaofeng cooked a dinner, all wild game. His cooking skills were average, but fortunately the ingredients were all good, and Su Weifeng and Sun Yumeng ate it very happily. The sun sets early in the mountains. It was not even 6 o'clock, but it was already completely dark. After Li Xiaofeng chatted with Su Weifeng for a few words, he went back to his room. Su Weifeng and Sun Yumeng were left in the room, but Sun Yumeng suddenly felt a little embarrassed. Su Weifeng chuckled and said, let's get on the Kang. It's warmer there. Yeah. Sun Yumeng took off her shoes and got on the Kang. She sat down and didn't know what to do. Usually in Su Weifeng's house, Zhao Xiaoshu was the one who flirted with Su Weifeng, and she occasionally followed and got intimate with him. Now it was just her and Su Weifeng. She really didn't know what to do, and she was a little worried that she couldn't control herself. Su Weifeng also got on the Kang and said, there's not much entertainment in the mountains, and everyone goes to bed early. Let's rest early tonight. I'll take you to the mountains tomorrow. That's too early, isn't it? Sun Yumeng blushed even more, pinching the corner of her clothes and whispered. Su Weifeng deliberately teased, why are you still afraid of what I will do to you? No. Sun Yumeng was even more shy and whispered, I just felt that it was only a little after 6 o'clock, and I went to bed, too hasty. Su Weifeng laughed and said, okay, I won't tease you anymore. I'll go to make the quilt. Sun Yumeng hurriedly said, I'll do it. After that, she quickly got up to get the quilt, but soon looked at Su Weifeng with a blushing face and said, it's just a quilt. Chapter 591 Beiji. One blanket and one quilt. Very standard rural household Kang supplies. And it was obviously freshly washed. This was the best hospitality Li Xiaofeng could offer. Li Xiaofeng obviously did not expect Su Weifeng to bring a woman with him. Normal was enough. Well, even if he brought Sun Yumeng, in Li Xiaofeng's opinion, the two of them must be in that kind of relationship, so the quilt would still be enough. Su Weifeng laughed and said, one is enough, we can just use it together. Sun Yumeng's face turned even redder, and she said angrily, how can that be possible? Why not? Su Weifeng asked with a smile. It's just not possible. Sun Yumeng stomped her feet on the Kang, and that silly and cute look appeared again. Su Weifeng really liked Sun Yumeng's look. She was particularly cute. However, he did not want to embarrass Sun Yumeng too much, so he smiled and said, don't worry, I won't go too far. I just want to hug you. Sun Yumeng blushed and said, you men are all liars. You say hug first, and then start doing other things. Su Weifeng couldn't help laughing again and said, okay, then today I'll let you see if I can do it. Keep your voice down. It will be so embarrassing if Xiaofeng hears it. Sun Yumeng was startled and quickly covered Su Weifeng's mouth. Su Weifeng stretched out his tongue and licked Sun Yumeng's palm gently. Sun Yumeng was immediately like being electrocuted, and she withdrew her hand in an instant, staring at Su Weifeng in amazement. What's wrong? Such a big reaction? Su Weifeng was also startled by Sun Yumeng. Sun Yumeng opened her mouth, then turned her face away and whispered, Brother Su, you are so bad. Although Su Weifeng had kissed her, it was under special circumstances. At home, although they occasionally had a little intimacy, how could he say it? It seemed a bit conventional. And this time, although it was just a small action, it really made Sun Yumeng feel a kind of flirting. So her heart was beating wildly, and for a moment, she didn't know where she was. Let's spread the quilt, at least it can be warm. Su Weifeng reminded Sun Yumeng. Sun Yumeng nodded gently, silently spread the quilt, and then secretly glanced at Su Weifeng with a red face, and was a little at a loss. Su Weifeng knew that this would only make Sun Yumeng more and more embarrassed, so he said, "Let's lie in the quilt, look at the phone for a while, and then go to sleep." As he said, Su Weifeng started to take off his clothes. Sun Yumeng turned her face away immediately. After hearing the sound of Su Weifeng getting into the quilt, she turned her head and whispered, "Turn your head away." Su Weifeng chuckled and said, "Are you afraid of me seeing it? Please, I'm really embarrassed." Sun Yumeng was shy and embarrassed. Su Weifeng felt really distressed and said, "Okay, I won't watch you take it off." Then he turned his head away. Soon he heard the sound of someone taking off clothes, and when the sound stopped, Sun Yumeng did not come in. Su Weifeng turned his head and saw Sun Yumeng sitting next to him in a shirt. Her little face was red, her eyes were about to shed tears, and she quickly raised her arms to cover her chest. Su Weifeng sat up directly, hugged her and lay down, saying, "Silly girl, it's not warm in this room, you will freeze again." He covered the two of them with the quilt. Sun Yumeng's body was stiff, and her breathing became extremely rapid. "I know you are afraid that I will be impulsive and do something that will affect my recovery. I promise you that I will only hold you today. I can't eat ginseng fruit like Zhu Beiji, who swallows it in one gulp and doesn't even taste it." Puchy. Sun Yumeng was amused by Su Weifeng and patted Su Weifeng's chest lightly, saying, "Brother Su is not Zhu Beiji. Ha." Su Weifeng was amused again and said, "I'm Zhu Beiji. Today I'm going to eat your cabbage." As he said that, his mouth slowly moved towards Sun Yumeng's face. "Bad guy, no." Sun Yumeng was embarrassed again and turned her head away, supporting herself on Su Weifeng's chest with both hands to prevent him from getting close. The two laughed and joked for a while, and Sun Yumeng relaxed. Su Weifeng was indeed just holding her, and there was no extra movement in his hands. "Okay, let's play with our phones for a while, and then go to sleep." Su Weifeng picked up his phone. "Yeah." Sun Yumeng agreed, and also picked up the phone. The kang in the room was still quite warm. Li Xiaofeng had specially burned a lot of firewood, but the temperature in the room was not high. Fortunately, Sun Yumeng was wearing a long-sleeved shirt, so she could bear it with her arms out. Although she had a mobile phone in her hand and was flipping through the short videos from time to time, her eyes were on them, but Sun Yumeng really didn't know what she was watching. She was actually sleeping in the same bed with Su Weifeng, sleeping on the same kang. This was the scene she had imagined in her dreams many times. She could feel that Su Weifeng's chest was very broad and warm. Leaning on his chest, she felt indescribable warmth in her heart. At this time, let alone on the warm kang, even in the ice and snow, she believed that she would never feel cold. And Su Weifeng's breath blew gently on her face from time to time, which was a little itchy, but she didn't want to avoid it. She just wanted Su Weifeng's breath to blow on her face like this. I don't know how long it took. Sun Yumeng suddenly felt Su Weifeng's eyes looking at her, and she subconsciously looked at Su Weifeng. In Su Weifeng's eyes, she saw a burning heat. Sun Yumeng panicked for a moment and stammered, "Brother Su, what do you want to do?" Su Weifeng smiled brightly and said, "I want to kiss you." This. Sun Yumeng panicked even more. Su Weifeng said softly, "With such a cute little Yumeng in my arms, if I don't kiss her, I really feel like I'm not a man anymore. Then, I can only kiss her." Sun Yumeng bit her lip and answered weakly. Su Weifeng raised his hand and gently stroked Sun Yumeng's face. The face was so elastic and tender, and the touch was so good, that it was indescribable. He said softly, "Yumeng, I really like you more and more now. Brother Su." Sun Yumeng's eyes misted up, her lips moved twice, and she said, "I." Then she took the initiative to kiss Su Weifeng on the lips. The kiss between the two was really emotional, and Su Weifeng really quickly entered that state. He was hesitating whether to give up this recovery, like he did with Menkeking, but Sun Yumeng sensed it all at once and immediately stopped her actions and kissed him gently while keeping her arms around him. Chapter 592 Special Herbs. Su Weifeng hesitated for a moment, then gave up his idea. In Sun Yumeng's heart, helping him recover from his injuries was her greatest wish. If he gave up at this time, he would be letting Sun Yumeng down. Not only would it not make Sun Yumeng happy, but it would make Sun Yumeng sad. So Su Weifeng immersed himself in the state of mind and recovered his injuries normally. More than an hour later, Su Weifeng opened his eyes and looked at Sun Yumeng's pretty face close at hand. Sun Yumeng's eyes lit up, and she asked Su Weifeng with her eyes. Su Weifeng showed a deep smile in his eyes, then he tightened his arms and kissed Sun Yumeng's lips. Sun Yumeng moaned, and her arms also hugged Su Weifeng tightly. After a long time, Su Weifeng let go of Sun Yumeng. Sun Yumeng's little face was flushed, and her eyes were full of love that could not be described. Brother Su, I can also help you recover. I'm so happy. This is why Sun Yumeng makes Su Weifeng like her so much. In her heart, she is always the first one for Su Weifeng. What she cares about most now is Su Weifeng's recovery. Well, the effect is quite good. My little Yumeng is the best. Su Weifeng kissed her on the forehead again. This kind of praise is not false at all, and comes from the heart. Sun Yumeng's smile is even sweeter, and she said, as long as I can be useful, I will be really happy. Su Weifeng said softly, Yumeng, you are not only useful, but also very useful. Su Weifeng can feel that the recovery effect of Sun Yumeng is really good, even better than that of Lin Zhuangsun, Meng Keqing and others. He knows that this is because Sun Yumeng's love for him is too pure, so the feedback she gives him is also the best. It's not that Lin Zhuangsun's love is not true enough, but they really don't have the purity of Sun Yumeng. She really doesn't care about herself at all, and only thinks about Su Weifeng alone. Love is really too deep. The two of them were a little tender again, and then they went to sleep. Sun Yumeng had a sweet smile on her face in her sleep. The next morning, when they woke up, there was already some movement in the yard outside. Rural people are used to going to bed early and getting up early. Su Weifeng and Sun Yumeng were naturally embarrassed to stay in bed, so they got up and put on their clothes. After yesterday's intimacy, a girl would normally be more generous. But Sun Yumeng was still as shy as before, and it seemed that there was no change at all, which made Su Weifeng like her even more. However, the happiness and sweetness on Sun Yumeng's face could not be concealed. When Li Xiaofeng saw Sun Yumeng in the morning, he was stunned. Su Weifeng coughed, which made Li Xiaofeng come back to his senses. Li Xiaofeng immediately said awkwardly, why do I feel that my sister-in-law is much more beautiful than yesterday? No way. Sun Yumeng was immediately embarrassed, feeling like she had done something bad, and was caught red-handed. Su Weifeng naturally understood, and laughed at this time, saying, then you should also find a wife quickly, so that I can drink at your wedding. Li Xiaofeng said awkwardly, who would be willing to marry me with our conditions? All the young girls in our village have married off, and there is no one left. Su Weifeng smiled and said, when your factory is built, you will still be the village chief, so how can you worry about finding a good girl to marry? Ah. Brother, do you agree to invest? Li Xiaofeng shouted in surprise. Su Weifeng nodded and said, I agree. I will have someone prepare a contract, and then transfer the money to you. Okay. Li Xiaofeng nodded repeatedly, rubbing his hands together, and was so excited that he was a little overwhelmed. After breakfast, Su Weifeng said, Yumeng and I are going to the mountain today. Li Xiaofeng immediately said in confusion, at this time, there is no green on the mountain. What are we going to do? Just take a walk, don't worry about us. Li Xiaofeng hesitated and said, there are wild wolves on our mountain. Don't go inside, just walk around the foot of the mountain. Well, don't worry, your brother is also a soldier. Even if you encounter wild wolves, it's okay. Li Xiaofeng was naturally anxious to prepare for the investment today, so he couldn't accompany Su Weifeng. After breakfast, Su Weifeng took Sun Yumeng up the mountain. At this time, the leaves on the mountain had almost fallen. At most some pine trees were still green. At the beginning, there were some mountain roads, but soon there were no mountain roads, and the two had to walk through the bushes. Sun Yumeng felt like she was in a scenic spot with Su Weifeng. Even if the mountain road was rugged, her little face was always filled with a happy smile. Su Weifeng held Sun Yumeng's hand and looked around. Although the herb he was looking for was here, there were not many of them. Moreover, it was not easy to find it at this time, so he had to observe carefully. After more than an hour, Su Weifeng finally found one and dug it out. Sun Yumeng was watching from the side and was also very interested. She asked, "Brother Su, is this what you are looking for?" "Well, I really found it. It's worth the trip." Su Weifeng nodded with satisfaction. Sun Yumeng asked again, "Is this valuable? Or does it have any special effects?" Su Weifeng shook off the dirt on the roots of the herb and said, "This herb is called Xiaoshanxi. Normally, it has no effect. There is no record of its use in almost all Chinese medicine books. But there is a kind of medicine that needs this medicine as an auxiliary medicine. Let's put it this way, it is a catalyst. Only with it can that medicine be effective." "Oh, then I understand. There is such a magical thing." Su Weifeng nodded and said, "Yes, so this thing is useless at all. Only I can use it. Can it recover from your injuries?" "No, this is a medicine that can strengthen the physical fitness. The unit I used to be in used it occasionally, but recently because of the lack of it, I haven't used it." "Oh, as long as it's useful." Sun Yumeng didn't understand what she heard, but she knew very well that this involved some secrets in Su Weifeng's army. She wouldn't ask questions that she shouldn't ask. Sun Yumeng picked another one that she thought had no problem and asked, "Then, can't we collect this herb? Or is there no other place?" Su Weifeng said helplessly, "There are so few people who can recognize this herb. It is very similar to an ordinary plant. Even those professional herbalists can't tell the difference." Sun Yumeng stuck out her tongue, then looked at Su Weifeng with admiration, and said, "Others can't recognize it, only Brother Su can recognize it. Brother Su is so awesome." Su Weifeng couldn't help but smile. Sun Yumeng looked like a typical little fangirl. Chapter 593 Village Tyrant. There is no green in the mountains, and there are yellow leaves everywhere. It seems that there is nothing to see, but on the branches of many trees, there are all kinds of fruits. Red hawthorn, yellow pear, and black small fruits that look like blue plum. Sun Yumeng followed Su Weifeng and picked a few from time to time. It was also an indescribable joy. Su Weifeng was seriously looking for this special small mountain herb. After 2 hours, he only found 4 plants in total. Although they walked and stopped, Sun Yumeng was already very tired, so Su Weifeng took him to find a big rock to sit down and rest. "Are you cold?" Su Weifeng asked with concern. Sun Yumeng took Su Weifeng's arm, with a sweet smile on her pretty face, and said, "It's not cold. My back is sweating from walking." "Is it? Let me see." Su Weifeng blinked. "Bad guy." Sun Yumeng was embarrassed and said angrily, "Brother Su, you only know how to bully others." Su Weifeng smiled and said, "Yes, I really like to bully you now." Sun Yumeng met Su Weifeng's gaze, pursed her lips lightly, and whispered, "I also am willing to be bullied by Brother Su." Su Weifeng's heart was shaken again, and he almost aroused that state again. Sun Yumeng's lethality is really amazing. A look, a little expression of coquettishness, can actually arouse Su Weifeng's reaction. Even if he could really enter this state here, Su Weifeng would not dare to. This is on the mountain. If Sun Yumeng was asked to accompany him motionlessly for an hour, Sun Yumeng would definitely not be able to bear it. At this time, Su Weifeng obviously had a deep love for Sun Yumeng. Su Weifeng took out the few small mountain angelica and sorted them out. Sun Yumeng said, "It took so long to find 4 plants. There are so few of them." Su Weifeng said, "This is not easy. I'm very satisfied. I can give it to a team member." Sun Yumeng didn't understand this, but she was happy that Su Weifeng was satisfied. After a short rest, Su Weifeng searched for a while, but there was nothing to find, so he took Sun Yumeng down the mountain. When they arrived at Li Xiaofeng's house, there were actually several people in Li Xiaofeng's house. In addition to Li Xiaofeng and the village chief Zhao Dabao, there were 2 other young people. Li Xiaofeng frowned, looking quite distressed. "This is Boss Su." Zhao Dabao introduced the 2 young men, and then said to Su Weifeng, "Boss Su, these are my 2 sons, Zhao Wen and Zhao Wu." Su Weifeng nodded and said, "Secretary Zhao, what's the matter with you guys?" Zhao Dabao's face suddenly looked a little embarrassed, and Li Xiaofeng said a little annoyed, "They also have some conditions." "Conditions?" Su Weifeng looked at the 2 of them, and said lightly, "Okay, let's talk." Zhao Dabao's 2 sons, one wears glasses and looks quite gentle, and the other is burly with a fierce face. They really look like a scholar and a warrior, and they live up to their names. Xiao Wen coughed lightly and said, Boss Su, let's be frank. If you want to open a factory here, you must make money. Whether everyone supports you or not will determine whether you can make money. Am I right? Su Weifeng nodded and said, yes. Xiao Wen smiled and said, we also know that you are relatives of Li Xiaofeng. Li Xiaofeng is a village chief, and you are here for him, but you have to know that in our village, the one who really has the final say is our Xiao family. Our Xiao family is the largest family in the village, and half of the people are relatives of our Xiao family. Without the support of our Xiao family, you will definitely not be able to do it. Su Weifeng narrowed his eyes and said, so what you mean is that in this matter, Xiaofeng's words don't count. It's up to your Xiao family, that is, you two brothers, to have the final say. Xiao Wu glared and said angrily, yes, whoever wants to do something here can't do it without the approval of us two brothers. As long as we agree, and we are covering you, everyone has to behave. You have to do whatever you want here. Xiao Wu's threat was even more naked. Li Xiaofeng's face flushed, and he opened his mouth, but he didn't say anything. It was obvious that what they said was true. Sun Yumeng frowned. She had never met such a person before. At this moment, she really couldn't imagine that there was such a domineering person. Su Weifeng's expression remained calm, and he said, then you have to ask for benefits, right? Xiao Wen laughed and said, Boss Su is a smart man, worthy of being a man who does big things. Then let's be frank. If you want to work here, you have to give us shares. Shares? Su Weifeng showed a faint smile on his face, and said, I didn't expect you to understand this. Not bad. Xiao Wen nodded and said, we don't want much. We just want 20% of the shares. As for how you and the village decide the rest, we don't care. Su Weifeng said, then what will you invest in? Xiao Wen laughed and said, Boss Su, are you pretending to be confused on purpose? Isn't it enough for us to guarantee that your factory will run smoothly here? Su Weifeng looked at the two of them and said, then tell me again, what will happen if I don't give you shares? Xiao Wu stood up immediately, stared at Su Weifeng, sneered, and said, you still want to open the factory without giving us shares? That's simply a dream. Why can't it be opened? Xiao Wu's viciousness had no effect on Su Weifeng. Xiao Wu suddenly laughed and said, if you don't believe it, then you can try it. When you build the factory, see who dares to come to work in your factory? Who dares to go in when I sit at the door of your factory? I tell you, we are asking you for 20% of the shares now, to give you some face. If you wait until you open the factory and then come to ask us, then we will not only ask for 20% of your shares. Su Weifeng nodded and said, it sounds like I really can't open this factory here if I don't let you invest. Xiao Wu snorted and said, it's best if you can figure it out. But, Su Weifeng narrowed his eyes and said, then how can I know that you have such ability? How do I know? Xiao Wen snorted and said, you can ask Li Xiaofeng whether our Xiao family has this ability here. Su Weifeng shook his head, then smiled and said, I still like to see with my own eyes. Let me give you a chance. Xiao Wu should speak with his fists. That's very simple. If you can help me stand up from here, I will give you the shares. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 594, No Tears Until You See the Coffin. Sun Xiaofeng was startled and said quickly, brother, don't be like this, let's discuss this slowly. At the same time, he winked at Su Weifeng, reminding him not to act rashly at this time. Although he hoped that Su Weifeng could come to invest, if Su Weifeng was hurt because of this, he would feel bad, and he would not be able to see his parents. Su Weifeng smiled and said, it's okay. Some people want to collect my protection fee, so I have to see if he has the ability to collect protection fee. Li Xiaofeng said anxiously, brother, you should go back first. I will discuss this with you later. Su Weifeng said, don't worry, I have to make sure of it today and avoid running here all the time. Sun Yumeng also smiled and said, it's okay. Li Xiaofeng was afraid that Su Weifeng would show off, but when he saw that Sun Yumeng, a delicate girl, actually said so, he was confused and subconsciously stepped aside. The three people of the Zhao family were also a little confused at this time, especially Sun Yumeng said that Su Weifeng must have something to rely on, but Su Weifeng didn't bring any bodyguards. How could he be so confident? Zhao Wen was still a little hesitant, but Zhao Wu had already glared at him and shouted, "Are you serious? Of course, the total investment is only a few 100,000. For me, it's just a drop in the bucket. Giving you 20 shares is nothing at all. Come on, find a way to make me stand up." Zhao Wu snorted, rolled up his sleeves, showing his thick forearms, and said, "Then I won't be polite." Su Weifeng nodded, but still sat on the edge of the kang so easily, without any preparation at all. This was also a kind of contempt for Zhao Wu. This guy suddenly showed a fierce light in his eyes, and directly stretched out his hand to grab Su Weifeng's arm, so that he could directly pull Su Weifeng up. He had always been strong, since he was young. He could throw even a 200 jin object onto his shoulders. Now, it was too easy for him to just pull Su Weifeng up. He really grabbed Su Weifeng's arm with his hand and immediately exerted force to pull it back. But he didn't know what happened. He had been holding it firmly, but now his hand was empty. The force of pulling suddenly had no object to apply force to, and all the force was applied to himself. Plop. He leaned back and sat directly on the ground. The room was instantly quiet enough to hear a pin drop. Everyone looked at Zhao Wu and then at Su Weifeng. No one knew what was going on. "Come again," Su Weifeng said to Zhao Wu with a smile. Zhao Wu suddenly shouted, jumped up, and once again grabbed Su Weifeng's arm fiercely. He grabbed it tighter and exerted more force. But this time, just like the last time, he fell to the ground again. And because he used more force, he didn't just fall on his buttocks, but fell flat on the ground. Li Xiaofeng, Zhao Dabao and Zhao Wen's eyes almost popped out. They had watched carefully just now, but they didn't see anything. It seemed that Su Weifeng didn't move at all, and then Zhao Wu fell out. Could it be that Su Weifeng knew magic? Zhao Wu climbed up again, and Zhao Wen quickly reminded him, use both hands. Zhao Wu suddenly came to his senses, and stretched out his hands. This time, Su Weifeng smiled and stretched out his arms directly, saying, hold on firmly. Zhao Wu's face turned black, and his hands quickly grabbed Su Weifeng's arms like two iron pliers. And this time he also learned his lesson, no longer exerting force violently, but exerting force slowly, a little bit at a time. Su Weifeng blinked his eyes and said, you are not that stupid. Zhao Wu frowned, and didn't say anything. His hands finally felt the reaction force from the other party, which made him very happy. He exerted force violently again, and he didn't believe that he couldn't pull Su Weifeng up this time. But it seemed that the consequences were no different. He exerted so much force that he lost strength in his hands again, and fell out again. This time he fell even worse. He fell to the ground, and slid back more than a meter, and his head hit the wall with a thud. A mineral water bottle on the windowsill fell directly, and the bottle mouth was inserted upside down, just inserted into his wide open mouth. Puff. Sun Yumeng couldn't help laughing. But he felt that this was not good, so he quickly covered his mouth again, but his face was swollen and red. Zhao Wu was furious. When had he ever suffered such a loss? He jumped up again and cursed loudly, fuck you, I'm going to kill you today. Then he rushed over and punched Su Weifeng in the face. Ah! Li Xiaofeng screamed. But his worry was not over for a second, and he saw Zhao Wu flying backwards. Zhao Wu was really a jerk. He fell 4 times in a row at this time, but he was not afraid at all. Instead, he was even more angry and rushed more fiercely. And this guy's now like he is fighting to the death with Su Weifeng, punching Su Weifeng in the face with every punch. But the result is almost the same every time, and the harder he hits, the heavier he gets hit. Plop. When Zhao Wu fell to the ground again, he wanted to get up, but after struggling for a few times, he couldn't stand up. He could only half kneel, panting. Are you convinced? Su Weifeng asked lightly at this time. Zhao Wu gritted his teeth and wanted to say that he was not convinced, but at this time, every part of his body was in unspeakable pain. If he hadn't relied on his fierceness, he would have cried out at this time, so the word unconvinced could not be said at all. Su Weifeng looked at Xiao Wen and Xiao Dabao again and said coldly, "It seems that you don't have the ability to collect protection fees from me." Xiao Dabao's face was embarrassed. He had a good heart, but he couldn't control his two sons. Xiao Wen frowned and said, "I didn't expect that Boss Su is so good at fighting. I really underestimated you. But what can you do if you are good at fighting? We have plenty of ways to prevent your factory from operating here. You can't just sit in this factory every day, right? And even if you sit here every day, so what? What about your employees? What about the things in your factory? Can you keep an eye on them?" Su Weifeng's face also darkened and said, "It seems that you will not give up until you see the Yellow River, and will not cry until you see the coffin. Do you think that I, an outsider, can't deal with local snakes like you?" Xiao Wen sneered and said, "Yes, even if you are a dragon, you have to coil around here. Very good, since you are threatening me like this, I don't need to be polite to you." Su Weifeng picked up the phone and dialed a number directly. Chapter 595 Let's wrestle. "Brother Su." An excited voice came from the other end of the phone. It was Zheng Yulang. Su Weifeng said with a smile, "Are you so excited about answering my call?" "Haha, of course I'm excited. You don't know how successful I have been recently. It's all because of Brother Su. Okay, let's talk about these things later. I'm in Hanfeng village. There are 2 village bullies here. You deal with them." "Fuck, I'll be there right away. If anyone dares to mess with Brother Su, you don't have to come. I'll be back tomorrow." "Okay, then I'll arrange it right away." Su Weifeng hung up the phone. His eyes swept over the 3 people from the Xiao family again and said lightly, "You go back." Xiao Wen was a little panicked at this time and stammered, Who did you call?" Su Weifeng said with a smile, "Just one of my brothers." Xiao Wen said fiercely, "You don't have to scare me. I tell you, don't think that we live in this poor mountain valley. We are also protected by someone." "Okay." Su Weifeng shrugged and said, "I like arm wrestling with powerful opponents the most. Don't let me down." Xiao Dabao hurriedly persuaded his 2 sons to leave here first. Xiao Wen and Xiao Wu were really guilty at this time. In their hearts, they thought that the person who came here to invest was just a small boss, so they dared to blackmail. But looking at Su Weifeng's style, he didn't seem like a small boss, and it seemed that his background was quite big. They were guilty and nervous. Li Xiaofeng was also unsure at this time and said, "Brother, why don't you go back first? I'm afraid they will do something again. These 2 guys are not good people. They dare to do anything bad." Su Weifeng smiled faintly and said, "Don't worry, they have no chance to jump again. You just do your business well." "Really?" Li Xiaofeng's eyes lit up. Su Weifeng patted him on the shoulder and said, "How can I, as your brother, lie to you? It's not easy for you to be the village chief." Li Xiaofeng's heart suddenly settled down inexplicably. Then he smiled bitterly and said, "It's not easy. Although the saying that poor mountains and bad waters produce unruly people is not very good, it sometimes makes sense. Our village is poor, not only because of inconvenient transportation, but also because many people are lazy and want to take advantage of others. As long as they see an advantage, they will rush up like crazy, like a cat seeing fish." Su Weifeng chuckled and said, "There is nothing we can do about it. Quality can only be improved after the people become rich. Just like our country, as it becomes richer and stronger, the quality of the people is improving rapidly. If you make money with the people in the village, then everyone will not rack their brains to cause trouble. Of course, the most important thing now is to get rid of the village tyrants who take the lead and deter others, so as to facilitate your work." "Brother, what you said was very good. I feel it is more sophisticated than what our village chief said." "Oh, no, even the village chief is not qualified to compare with you. He has to be the county chief or the mayor." Su Weifeng burst into laughter and said, "You're flattering me too much." Sun Yumeng at the side once again showed an intoxicated look. What Su Weifeng said was really great. Such profound words actually came from the mouth of the person she liked. Sun Yumeng felt indescribably proud and happy. Xiao Wen and Xiao Wu return home. Xiao Wu angrily kicked a chair at the door and cursed, "No, I can't swallow this breath. I'll gather people now, find 10 or 20 people. I don't believe that I can't beat him. Xiao Dabao hurriedly said. Xiao Wu, stop making trouble. Boss Su seems to be very powerful. What if he really arrests you? Arrest me? I'll kill him. Xiao Wu shouted arrogantly. He's a foreigner. I'll kill him and bury him directly. No one in our village will dare to tell anyone. Xiao Dabao said anxiously. Xiao Wu, you mustn't do this. Boss Su came to invest in the village. He wants to make everyone rich together. If you make such a fuss and he leaves again, there will be nothing. Xiao Wu didn't care about this. He gritted his teeth and said, if he beats me, what else does he want to do here? I don't care whether others make money or not. If I don't get the benefits, he can't do it. Xiao Dabao was angry and annoyed, but he had no idea what to do with this naughty son. At this time, Xiao Wen said with a gloomy face, Xiao Wu, stop making trouble. I'm always a little uneasy. Let's not let anything really happen this time. Xiao Wu glared and said, what else can happen? In this village, we are the boss. Li Xiaofeng wants to pull a small boss here and want to be the boss in the village, but it's impossible. Xiao Wen said, didn't that boss Su just say that he called people? Then let's take a look first. This can also show his background. If he really has some strength, we can't afford to offend him and never confront him again. When his factory is opened and money is invested in, he can't help it. Xiao Wu said unconvincedly, he is just bragging. Humph, I'm also a prominent person in the county. Why would I be afraid of him? Xiao Wen said, if he really doesn't have much strength and is just bragging, it won't be too late for us to deal with him. Just listen to me and wait today. Xiao Wu was not convinced by his father, but he was more convinced of his eldest brother. After all, his brother was smart and his ideas were better than his own. After making dinner, Xiao Wen and Xiao Wu were drinking at home, but there was a sound of cars outside. There were not many car sounds in this village, and it was obviously not the sound of one car, but many cars passing by together. This was definitely something that had not been seen in the village for many years. The two hurried out of the house. They saw more than 10 cars driving into the village. Fuck, they are all good cars. Xiao Wu suddenly widened his eyes and shouted. The cars that came in were all off-road jeeps, and none of these cars looked cheap. Xiao Wen's heart tightened, and his face was a little ugly. He said, let's take a look. Whose house are these cars going to? These cars drove slowly here, and they followed, and soon saw the car parked in front of Li Xiaofeng's house. Xiao Wen's face turned pale instantly, and he stammered, oh no, it's the car called by Boss Su. Even the arrogant Xiao Wu was frightened at this moment. So many luxury cars were called with just one phone call. The other party must be very powerful. Even the most powerful boss in the county does not have such strength. This is not something a small local tyrant like him can afford to offend. Chapter 596. The Terrifying Face. That's Brother Liang. What shocked Xiao Wu the most was that the first person to jump out of a car was someone he was familiar with. Brother Liang was a very powerful figure in the county, and Xiao Wu had to act like a grandson in front of him. But now this big brother, whom he had always admired, was like a grandson, nodding and bowing to the people getting out of other cars, so respectful. But those people ignored Brother Liang. Xiao Wen shook his body twice, and hurriedly said to Xiao Wu, let's go, let's run quickly, we can't stay here. Xiao Wu turned around, and ran home without saying a word. At this time, how could they dare to stay here, for fear that these people would chop them up and feed them to dogs? While everyone in the village was focusing on these luxury cars, they took some things and quickly went into the mountains. At Li Xiaofeng's home, Li Xiaofeng was so shocked that his jaw was about to drop. He only knew that Su Weifeng had opened a company and had some money, but he never thought that his cousin had such a large network of contacts and could call so many people with just one phone call. And these people were not just the kind of scoundrels in society, but were obviously not simple people. Brother Su. Zheng Yulang rushed over and gave Su Weifeng a big hug. Su Weifeng laughed and said, why did you make such a big fuss? Zheng Yulang let go of Su Weifeng and said angrily, which bastard dares to mess with Brother Su? I will skin him alive. Su Weifeng said with a smile, they are just two local bullies in the village. I thought you would just to file a case and arrest them, but you acted like you were here to fight. Do I need to find someone to fight? Zheng Yulong realized that he had misunderstood. He laughed dryly and said, it's rare that Brother Su asked me to do something, so I didn't think about making some face for Brother Su. Besides, it's not all my fault. These guys were drinking with me, and when they heard about your Brother Su, they immediately brought people here one by one. Zheng Yulong introduced a few young men to Su Weifeng. It turned out that these people were also from big families, but they were from the city, and Zheng Yulong, the young master of a big family from the provincial capital, was naturally the object of their flattery. Especially Zheng Yulong's status has risen greatly among the young masters in the provincial capital recently. When he came to this city, he was even more popular. He was kind-hearted, so Su Weifeng couldn't say anything more. He smiled and greeted others. Although Su Weifeng was not from a big family, this bet almost implicated all the families in the province. Now, which big family didn't know about Su Weifeng, this awesome person? Sister-in-law, this Brother Su is too amazing. Li Xiaofeng didn't dare to come over to say hello, so she spoke to Sun Yumeng in a low voice. Yeah. Sun Yumeng responded softly, her eyes never leaving Su Weifeng. She was not a vain person, but she was still indescribably proud to see her beloved being treated like a star. Li Xiaofeng stuck out his tongue and said, I was thinking that my sister-in-law is not the kind of person who is greedy for fame and fortune. How could she follow my brother, even though she knew he had a wife? Now I understand that no woman can resist a person like my brother. Hey, Sister Yumeng is here too. Zheng Yulong saw Sun Yumeng at this time and came over to say hello. Hello, Yulong, long time no see. Sun Yumeng quickly stood beside Su Weifeng and greeted Zheng Yulong. Everyone looked at Sun Yumeng and waited for Zheng Yulong to introduce her. Zheng Yulong looked at Su Weifeng, who smiled faintly and said, call me sister-in-law. Zheng Yulong laughed and said, Brother Su, you finally admitted it. Come on, come and meet me. This is my sister-in-law. Everyone remember it, and don't offend her in the future. Hello, sister-in-law. There were no less than 20 people, and they all shouted in unison. Sun Yumeng was immediately ashamed and embarrassed, but more of a kind of joy. This was the first time that Su Weifeng asked her to face this identity in public. Hello, everyone. Hello, everyone. However, this made Sun Yumeng very embarrassed. She lowered her head and dared not meet everyone's eyes. Su Weifeng introduced Li Xiaofeng to everyone. Although Li Xiaofeng was a distant cousin of Su Weifeng, since Su Weifeng introduced him, it also meant to take care of him, so everyone naturally remembered it. What Li Xiaofeng didn't know was that because of this meeting, he not only had smooth sailing in the village, but also rose to prominence from the village to the township, and then to the county to become an official. Of course, this is all later, so let's not talk about it for now. Li Xiaofeng's house couldn't accommodate anyone, so Su Weifeng roughly explained the matter in the yard. Immediately, a family in the city took over the matter. Su Weifeng again instructed that this matter must be reasonable and legal. Xiao Wen and Xiao Wu are the tyrants of the village. They have done a lot of bad things over the years. If they are investigated, they will definitely be charged with serious crimes, especially now that the country has zero tolerance for such village tyrants who bring disaster to the local area. As long as the case is handled in a normal legal way, they will be punished. This means that, even if Xiao Wen and Xiao Wu run away now, they will go to jail sooner or later. With so many people here, Su Weifeng can no longer stay with Li Xiaofeng. This is too ostentatious. He always likes to keep a low profile when doing things. After telling Li Xiaofeng a few words, Su Weifeng took Sun Yumeng to Zheng Yulong's car. Along the way, a long line of cars came to the city again. Everyone ran so far, so Su Weifeng naturally couldn't put on airs, and invited everyone to a big meal. Of course, if it was his treat, I don't know how many people would rush to pay the bill. When they returned to the hotel, Sun Yumeng was already a little drunk. Since she appeared as Su Weifeng's woman, everyone naturally had to toast her. Even if she only drank a small sip of wine at a time out of politeness, she couldn't handle the crowd. Her alcohol tolerance was average, so she couldn't handle it at this time. After entering the room, Sun Yumeng lay down on the bed and said angrily, I'm really a little drunk. There's nothing I can do about this situation today. Su Weifeng sat next to her and leaned over to take off Sun Yumeng's shoes. Ah, no, I'll do it myself. Sun Yumeng hurriedly wanted to sit up. Su Weifeng held her down and said, let me serve you today. This? No, how can I let you serve me? Sun Yumeng was a little panicked. Silly girl, I'm your boyfriend, right? It's only natural for a boyfriend to serve his girlfriend. As he spoke, Su Weifeng took off Sun Yumeng's shoes and socks. Looking at Sun Yumeng's delicate little feet, Su Weifeng's hands couldn't help but hold them, and then he gently stroked them. Chapter 597. Are you really? Ah. Brother Su, you. Although Sun Yumeng had kissed Su Weifeng several times, she had never done any other intimate things. Especially now that Su Weifeng was playing with her feet, she felt ashamed. Just as she was about to pull her feet back, she suddenly found that Su Weifeng was different. He was standing there motionless, and he had actually entered the state of being in a. Sun Yumeng spent more than half an hour in this self-blame and annoyance. Su Weifeng finally finished. Then Sun Yumeng jumped down without saying a word and said anxiously, go wash your hands. Go wash your hands. What's wrong? Su Weifeng was a little confused by Sun Yumeng's eagerness. Sun Yumeng said anxiously, my feet are so dirty, you still touch them. Go wash your hands. They are so dirty. Dirty? Su Weifeng raised his hand and stretched it in front of his nose. Ah. You still smell it. Sun Yumeng quickly pulled Su Weifeng's hand away and dragged him to the bathroom. Su Weifeng smiled and said, it really doesn't smell. Your feet don't sweat. Sun Yumeng said even more embarrassedly, even if you don't sweat, it's dirty. Wash your hands quickly. In this matter, Sun Yumeng actually showed a rare persistence and forced Su Weifeng to wash his hands with hand sanitizer several times before letting Su Weifeng go. When both of them finished taking a shower, it was almost 12 o'clock, and they lay directly on the bed. After what happened last night, although Sun Yumeng was still a little shy today, she was more or less open, just a little. Brother Su. Sun Yumeng lay beside Su Weifeng, turned her head, her face slightly red, and spoke hesitantly. What's wrong? Su Weifeng turned sideways and looked at her with a smile. This? Sun Yumeng still couldn't say anything. Su Weifeng chuckled and said, do you want to ask why I can enter that state by touching your feet? Yeah. Sun Yumeng nodded repeatedly. Su Weifeng rubbed his nose and said, Zhuangxuan said I'm a foot control. Huh. Sun Yumeng subconsciously retracted her feet. I didn't have any interest in women's feet before, but when I first started dating Zhuangxuan, I happened to touch her feet a few times, and then I felt that her feet were really beautiful, and then I touched them, and they felt good, and I seemed to like holding them. Sun Yumeng said hesitantly, then, do you really have this control? Su Weifeng chuckled and said, if I really did, would you despise me? No. Sun Yumeng shook her head vigorously and said, how could I despise you? It's just that I really feel that your feet are so dirty, and I feel very ashamed when you touch me. Su Weifeng's smile became even more intense. He stretched out his finger and gently scratched Sun Yumeng's nose and said, you are the person I like. How can I think it's dirty? I think any part of your body is the most beautiful. Sun Yumeng's face suddenly turned redder. Su Weifeng's words really made her think wrongly. After gently twisting her waist, Sun Yumeng said shyly, Brother Su, you are so mean. Su Weifeng chuckled, blinked at Sun Yumeng deliberately, and said, is this bad? I want to be even meaner. No, you have already entered a state tonight. You can't be mean to me again. Sun Yumeng said, shrinking her body back and directly distanced herself from Su Weifeng. Ah, no way. You can't even hug me? Su Weifeng didn't expect Sun Yumeng to have such a big reaction. No. I'm afraid you'll be mean again. Brother Su, it's getting late. Let's go to bed, okay? But I don't even touch such a beautiful and lovely girlfriend. How can I sleep without hugging her? Then I'll hold your hand. Sun Yumeng stretched out her little hand and held it with Su Weifeng. Su Weifeng gently pinched her little hand and said, this little bit of benefit is too little, isn't it? Sun Yumeng pouted and said, then I'll kiss you once, and then we'll go to sleep. You're not allowed to do more than that. This is definitely not okay. Looking at the resolute look in Sun Yumeng's eyes, Su Weifeng's heart was filled with tenderness, and he said, well, then kiss once. It's agreed. Just once. You're not allowed to force it. Sun Yumeng emphasized again with a little worry. Su Weifeng's eyes were even softer, and he said, just kiss me once, and I'll be indescribably happy. Sun Yumeng came over carefully and kissed Su Weifeng once, then immediately turned over and ran away. Su Weifeng really didn't do anything else. Sun Yumeng was thinking about him and everything. If he couldn't control himself, he would really let down Sun Yumeng's kindness. Sun Yumeng soon felt that Su Weifeng was asleep, and the room was particularly quiet. She could hear Su Weifeng's breathing, which was very steady, and his qi was very long. A little closer to Su Weifeng, she could also hear his heartbeat. Boom, boom, boom. Each beat was so powerful, like the beating of a war drum. Under the night, looking at Su Weifeng's face, it was a little hazy, but it made Sun Yumeng like him more and more, and the more she looked at him, the more intoxicated she became. After all, she was also a screenwriter, and Sun Yumeng knew very well how strong the temptation was for a woman sleeping in the same bed with a man. Especially since the two of them were in such a relationship. Even if Su Weifeng really did something to her, she would not refuse. But Su Weifeng could actually withstand this temptation, which required such a strong willpower. Such an excellent man really made Sun Yumeng love him more and more, and she even felt a little impulsive, and took the initiative to do something. But reason still told her that she couldn't do this. For Su Weifeng's injury, she had to be more sober than Su Weifeng. Love is not about taking, but giving. Chapter 598 Sun Yumeng's Confession. Li Xiaofeng actually didn't need Su Weifeng to show up anymore. There were too many people who would help him in the future. He could even imagine that many people would come here to invest. This was also a way to get closer to Su Weifeng. He had to admit that, even if Su Weifeng didn't establish a family or something, his influence was already very large in this province, not inferior to those big families at all. It was already evening when they returned to Yangcheng. As soon as the two entered the house, Zhao Xiaoshu ran up to greet them. He first gave Su Weifeng a hug and a kiss, and then pulled Sun Yumeng over to look her up and down. Why are you looking at me like that? Sun Yumeng made Zhao Xiaoshu feel guilty. Hurry up and confess. What have you done these 2 days? Zhao Xiaoshu pulled Sun Yumeng to sit on the sofa and started to interrogate her directly. Lin Zhuangxuan also looked at her with a smile. Sun Yumeng was suddenly embarrassed and said angrily, "No, I didn't do anything." Haha. Zhao Xiaoshu immediately laughed, pointing at Sun Yumeng's face, and said, "Sister Yumeng, do you know that you can't lie? Once you lie, your face will turn red and your eyes will avoid looking at people. Why don't you confess?" Lin Zhuangxuan smiled and said, "Yumeng, what is there to hide? There are no outsiders." Sun Yumeng lowered her head and twisted the corner of her clothes and whispered, "It's really nothing. It's just that way, at night." "What's wrong? What's wrong? Did you have sex?" Zhao Xiaoshu was so anxious. No. This time Sun Yumeng answered quickly and hurriedly said, "It's just kissing." Zhao Xiaoshu rolled his eyes and said, "Oh my god. That's all. It's boring. It's not like you haven't kissed Brother Su before." Sun Yumeng blushed and said, "Brother Su can recover from his injuries like this. I don't dare." "So that's how it is." Lin Zhuangxuan and Zhao Xiaoshu suddenly realized that, although they were joking, they obviously put Su Weifeng's injuries first. But when Zhao Xiaoshu knew that Su Weifeng could enter that state even when holding Sun Yumeng's feet, his eyes widened. Then he immediately asked in surprise, "Brother Su, you don't have this special fetish, do you?" Lin Zhuangxuan immediately burst out laughing and said, "I can prove this point. He does have it." Su Weifeng had nothing to be embarrassed about and said, "Who knows? Anyway, I like Zhuangxuan and Yumeng's feet very much. What about mine?" Zhao Xiaoshu moved his legs and put his little feet on Su Weifeng's legs. Sun Yumeng frowned and said anxiously, "Don't do this. Have you washed your feet? They are so dirty." Zhao Xiaoshu chuckled and said, "I will wash them when I get home." Su Weifeng held it directly, pinched it, and said, "Not bad, not bad. Yours is similar to Yumeng and Zhuangxuan's, small and soft." Zhao Xiaoshu immediately said happily, "Really? Then let's do it today, and I will let you try it when I come back." no matter whether Su Weifeng said it was true or false. As long as Su Weifeng said so, Zhao Xiaoshu was indescribably happy. But since Sun Yumeng could use her feet to help Su Weifeng recover from his injuries, she had to try it. All the parts of her body, as long as they were useful, should not be wasted. Of course, it was not possible now. Su Weifeng had been in this state for 2 consecutive days, and he would definitely not be able to do it again at this time. After dinner, Su Weifeng came to the study and sent a message to Meng Keqing. "Miss me?" Meng Keqing replied immediately and sent a cute expression. Of course. Su Weifeng chatted with Meng Keqing for a few words and then got straight to business. "Ask Song Zinan to contact me. I have something good to give her." Meng Keqing immediately said happily, "Okay, this girl said she wanted to find you a few days ago. I'll let her call you later." Then she immediately said jokingly, "Is it because the girls at home can't help you anymore, so you want to find someone new?" Su Weifeng laughed, and his heart was really embarrassed. "No, I really have something to find her for. Recently, I found some herbs that can be made into a medicine to enhance her strength." "Oh, that's good too, and you can cultivate your relationship by the way. It's just that, although this girl admires you, I'm afraid she just has admiration for you, but lacks the feeling of liking you. Teo, this stinky girl, has been hanging out with you for several days, but she only knows how to play around, and doesn't know how to cultivate a good relationship with you. These 2 guys are just idiots." Su Weifeng couldn't help but complain in his heart, "Aren't you best friends? Is it okay to talk about them behind their backs?" But I also know that Meng Keqing doesn't really hate them. On the contrary, because they have a very good relationship, she is even more unscrupulous when talking about them. The 2 chatted endlessly, just like a couple in love. However, Meng Keqing obviously had too many things to do and stopped talking after more than 10 minutes. Not long after, Su Weifeng's phone rang. It was Song Zinan who called. "Hello, Captain." Song Zinan always greeted loudly. Su Weifeng was startled, then smiled and said, "Have you joined Long Xiao?" "Yes, Captain, I have reported to Long Xiao and have been training in Long Xiao recently. How do you feel?" Su Weifeng asked. Long Xiao is indeed different. The training here is more intense and the methods are better than my previous training. Although I have encountered some difficulties for the time being, I believe that I will be able to pass it smoothly. Su Weifeng said, "Yes, I believe you can complete it, but you should ask for a few days off from the team these 2 days, and then come to my place. Report to the captain. The team does not allow leave. It's okay, just say I asked you to come." "Okay, Captain." Su Weifeng asked Song Zinan to come here, naturally to give her the herbs he collected this time. This was also a decision made by Su Weifeng, after weighing the pros and cons. This little shanty is only enough for 1 person. Even if it is taken to Long Xiao, it is not very useful. In the heart of loving the house and the people in it, he likes Meng Keqing and also wants to help Song Zinan. Song Zinan is also a member of Long Xiao's team. Training her will also increase Long Xiao's strength. As for not considering giving it to Feng Baoer, it is even simpler. Feng Baoer is just a police officer. Her current strength is more than enough to face most dangers. The dangers that Feng Baoer and Song Zinan will encounter in the future are definitely incomparable, so Su Weifeng decided to improve Song Zinan's strength. Song Zinan came very quickly and came to kill him the next day. Su Weifeng did not let Song Zinan come to his house, but went directly to the villa where Meng Keqing stayed on the island last time. Now it is already past the tourist season, and there are few people on the island, which is particularly quiet. Here, no matter what you do, you will not be disturbed. The most important thing is that this matter also involves some embarrassing things. If the family members see it, I don't worry that they will be angry, but they will definitely make fun of them. Chapter 599 Promote Song Zinan. In the living room of the villa, Song Zinan sat opposite Su Weifeng, her back straight. Her complexion darkened a lot compared to the last time they saw each other, but it made her look full of strength, like a queen of flowers. Su Weifeng waved his hand and said, "You don't have to be like this. It's better to be casual. Wait until I get back to Long Xiao, then you can do this again." Song Zinan relaxed a little, but still sat straight, and said, "Captain, you are in a hurry to call me here this time. I wonder what's the matter?" Su Weifeng said, I have some things here that can improve your personal strength. This was a treatment that all regular team members had in Longzhou before, but later it became difficult to find medicinal materials, so now I can only give you a special treatment. Song Zinen's eyes lit up, but she immediately said, Zinen is just a newcomer in Longzhou, and many people in the team need to improve their strength more than me. Su Weifeng nodded in appreciation. Song Zinen had not been in Longzhou for long, but it was obvious that she had already felt the atmosphere of Longzhou. They have already used it, so you don't have to worry about it. Song Zinen immediately stood up, saluted, and said, then Zinen thanks the captain for his care. Su Weifeng waved his hand for her to sit down, and said, but I need to explain a few things to you in advance. Captain, please speak. Su Weifeng said, the method I will use is to soak the medicine in water, and then you take a bath in it, and you have to take off all your clothes, and I have to stand by and help you at any time, so that the medicinal effect can better enter your body and strengthen your physique. Song Zinen's answer was not so fast this time, but after a slight hesitation, he said loudly, I understand. I'm a member of Longzhou, and the instructor once said that there is no distinction between male and female members of Longzhou. Su Weifeng nodded and said, that's good. You should get ready too, and we'll start in the afternoon. Except for the special herb Qiao Yushan, Su Weifeng can buy the rest of the herbs in the pharmacy in Yangcheng. This is also the special feature of this prescription. If there is no Qiao Yushan, the things made from these medicines are basically nothing, not even tonic. But with the addition of Qiao Yushan, the efficacy of the medicine has changed dramatically. Before starting, the two had to prepare that Su Weifeng had to understand Song Zinen's way of running the true Qi. What Song Zinen learned was the Song family's kung fu, and Su Weifeng had never been exposed to it before. Song Zinen did not hesitate to tell Su Weifeng about the kung fu he had learned. Although this method of running the true Qi is also considered a family secret, it is not like in martial arts novels that it cannot be passed on to others. Because now practicing true Qi is not as simple as described in novels. In addition to talent and hard work, it requires a master who has learned it and teaches it a little bit. Otherwise, you can generate true Qi in your body and then run it in your meridians just by your own thoughts. It can basically be said that it has been lost long ago. So there are really too few people who can practice true Qi now, because there is a lack of masters who can pass it on. Su Weifeng learned that the Song family's method was not better than what he had learned. He only needed to know the route and method of Song Zinen's true Qi flow before he could help her. At 1 o'clock in the afternoon, a bathroom on the second floor was already filled with water vapor and a special medicinal fragrance. As soon as Song Zinen came in, she felt refreshed and immediately knew that the medicine inside was definitely good stuff. Su Weifeng stood up from the bathtub with the clear green medicine juice still in his hand. He turned around and said, you can start now. However, after Su Weifeng said this, he originally planned to walk out directly. But who knew that when Song Zinen came in, she was actually wearing a bath towel. As soon as he finished speaking, she actually shook off the bath towel in front of him. Su Weifeng's eyes almost popped out. This was too direct. He turned his head and looked to the side, but there was a mirror over there. He could still see Song Zinen in the mirror, but at this time, if he tilted his head again, it would be too obvious. I hope Song Zinen didn't notice the mirror, so I pretended to be calm and said, go in. Okay. Song Zinen agreed again, and then went directly into the bathtub. However, when she sat down, the corners of her mouth slightly raised, revealing a faint smile, but it disappeared immediately. Song Zinen sat down, and her whole body was immersed in the medicine juice, leaving only her head exposed. The medicine juice was slightly transparent, and from above, you could still vaguely see some of the scenery inside. Su Weifeng pulled a small stool and sat on the edge of the bathtub, saying, let's start now. First, run the true Qi according to your method. Song Zinen agreed and sat up. There was a slight sound of water, and the part above her neck and chest suddenly appeared above the water. Su Weifeng did not avoid his gaze this time. To do this, he could not be distracted at all. Before sitting down just now, he had adjusted his mentality. Song Zinen glanced at Su Weifeng and saw Su Weifeng's clear eyes. After taking a deep breath, Song Zinan closed her eyes and began to circulate her ki. Su Weifeng was watching quietly beside her. After a while, Song Zinan's face was already showing a hint of pain. Su Weifeng shouted softly, "The medicinal ki enters the body and conflicts with the ki. There will be pain. You must endure it." Song Zinan's body shook slightly. Although she was still enduring the pain, she was obviously calm and continued to circulate her ki. After more than 10 minutes, Su Weifeng suddenly stood up, put his right hand directly into the water, and then pressed it directly on the danshan of Song Zinan. Song Zinan's body tensed up all of a sudden, but Su Weifeng had already told her about this method in advance, so she was also mentally prepared. It didn't feel sudden, and she quickly relaxed her body. At this time, the absorbed medicinal power had just entered the danshan, and a strong tingling sensation occurred in the danshan, as if countless needles were piercing her danshan. Song Zinan almost jumped up from the pain, but a strong ki suddenly came in from outside, immediately surrounded the drug power, and the pain was immediately relieved. After an unknown amount of time, the pain completely disappeared, and then the drug power turned into ki, which fed back to the limbs and meridians. "Come out!" Su Weifeng shouted again. Song Zinan stood up immediately, splashing water, and then stepped directly out of the bathtub. Su Weifeng's face was solemn, his hands flew, and he slapped Song Zinan's body one by one. Each of his palms was of the same strength, with almost no difference. He started from the danshan, and then quickly slapped upwards. Chapter 600. The effect is quite good. A total of 108 slaps were made. Su Weifeng slapped Song Zinan from head to toe. Then he shouted again, "Keep soaking." Song Zinan immediately entered the bathtub. Su Weifeng sat down slowly, took a few deep breaths, and wiped his sweat with a towel beside him. This job is very tiring and consumes a lot of energy. Therefore, this method is not only difficult to find the catalyst like medicines Shansky, but also another important reason is that there are not many people in Longzhou who can do this. It is difficult to take care of all the people who train Longzhou, and how can we take care of others, so this thing can't be promoted. After 3 times, after slapping Song Zinan for the last time, Su Weifeng sat down on the ground. Song Zinan was also startled, and directly stretched out her hand to grab Su Weifeng's arm, and said anxiously, "Captain, what's wrong with you?" Su Weifeng looked up and blushed instantly. Because Song Zinan was half bent over at this time, the angle between the two people, cough cough. Su Weifeng quickly lowered his head and waved his hands, saying, "It's okay, I'm just a little tired. It's over this time, go and rest first. I'll help you to the bed to rest." Song Zinan said to help, but she actually stretched out her arms and picked up Su Weifeng, or a princess hug. Su Weifeng blushed and said anxiously, "No need to do this, I can walk by myself." "Captain, there is no difference between men and women in Longzhou. As the captain, you set the rules yourself, why don't you follow them?" Su Weifeng was speechless for a moment, because of Song Zinan's retort. He opened his mouth dryly, and simply said no more, just hugged him. He was indeed exhausted. This is the way, a princess hug. This Song Zinan better not make fun of him about this in the future. Song Zinan directly carried Su Weifeng to a bedroom on the 2nd floor, put him on the bed, looked at Su Weifeng's wet clothes, and said, "Captain, let me help you take off your clothes." "No need." Su Weifeng shouted hurriedly, glared, and said, "Hurry up and go back to consolidate, don't waste my efforts." Song Zinan then hurriedly retreated. Looking at Song Zinan's background from behind, Su Weifeng's face was hot again. This Song Zinan's figure is really good. But there is one thing that makes people dissatisfied. That is, there is a clear difference in the color of her skin. The exposed parts are obviously darker than other parts. This is also the result of training. Longzhou's training is so hard, and many of them are outdoors. The direct sunlight will definitely make the skin color darker. Judging from the skin color, Song Zinan is not special at all. That is because Longzhou is really training hard. Such a dignified lady, and a lady of extremely high status, is willing to endure this hardship. From this point of view, Su Weifeng has to admire her. Putting aside these messy thoughts, Su Weifeng also began to restore his physical strength and true energy. 2 hours later, Su Weifeng had almost recovered. This kind of consumption is still very easy to recover. He got up and went to Song Zinen's room. Song Zinen was sitting on the bed. Seeing Su Weifeng coming in, she jumped off the bed. Puff. Why don't you put on your clothes? Su Weifeng turned his head quickly and asked speechlessly. Song Zinen said, Captain, you didn't say that. I thought I couldn't wear clothes when I came back to practice. Ahem, I forgot to mention it. Put on your clothes quickly. Song Zinen said, it doesn't matter if you don't wear it. Anyway, you have to take it off next time. Next time is tomorrow. Hurry up. Su Weifeng didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Song Zinen put on her clothes and looked at Su Weifeng with his back to her. She smiled again and said, I'm dressed. Su Weifeng turned around and breathed a sigh of relief, saying, it's much more comfortable this way. Song Zinen frowned slightly and said, Captain, is my body ugly? Do you feel so uncomfortable seeing it? Su Weifeng snorted and said, of course not. It's true that I feel uncomfortable when you, a big beauty, take off all your clothes in front of me. Song Zinen said, oh, then I was wrong. I thought the captain disliked my body. Don't talk about these nonsense. How come you are the same as that crazy girl Teo Teo? Oh, no, you hang out with Teo Teo every day. It would be strange if you were normal. Song Zinen raised her chin and said, Teo Teo is Teo Teo, and I'm me. She is so stupid, how can she compare with me? Su Weifeng rolled his eyes. He didn't want to argue with him on this issue and said, let me see the effect. Su Weifeng grabbed Song Zinen's arm and said, transportation capacity. Song Zinen's arm immediately exerted force and suddenly became as hard as iron. This surprised her. She knew her own strength very well, and now it had obviously changed a lot. The strength in this arm was stronger, especially the toughness of the skin. She could also feel that it was stronger, as if it would not be hurt, even if it was cut with a knife. Su Weifeng nodded with satisfaction and said, the effect is quite good. It can be said that among no less than 20 people who have been through my hands, you are definitely ranked first in effect. Song Zinen's eyes lit up and said, Captain, is this true? Su Weifeng let go of Song Zinen's arm and nodded with a smile. Song Zinen waved her hands twice and said, then Captain, are you saying that I can become the strongest warrior in Longzhou in the future? There is hope, but it is not just your basic strength, but also requires various other efforts. Whether it can work depends on you. I will definitely not let you down. Su Weifeng gave Song Zinen such affirmation because Song Zinen's foundation was too good. You have to know that, although the members of Longzhou are all good seedlings promoted from various troops, it is really difficult to find someone with a foundation like Song Zinen among them. People with true ki are basically monopolized by major families, and major families cherish these people very much. This is a great manifestation of the family's strength. They are reluctant to send the masters in the family to the army, especially to a unit like Longzhou. The mortality rate in Longzhou is really too high. Among the comrades who joined Longzhou with Su Weifeng, there are less than 10 who are still alive. So Su Weifeng had to admire the Song family for sending Song Zinen to Longzhou. That's it for today. Let's start tomorrow. Su Weifeng said, and he was ready to leave. Song Zinen followed immediately and said, shouldn't we eat? Oh, that's right. I'm really hungry too. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.